All right, and good morning to y'all. Not good evening. It's not good afternoon. It's good morning. We're gonna have breakfast. We're gonna have playoffs for breakfast. Down on the other side of the screen is my associate editor, Christopher Lyke, joining us here. By the way, what y'all about to see over here over the next two and a half hours, what you're gonna see here, I think this is going to be worth the investment and the pushback of time a little bit, minus the internet issues that we were having last night. I was having last night because my ISP has decided they wanted to make things a little crazy for us. But yes, indeed. And I'm trying to see. There's something with the StreamYard, something of the comments, but I'm not sure. I think I want to bet. I want to said it's a Facebook user, so I'm trying to figure out who it is here that has made the comment here, and trying to see here. It's Emery Smith. Emery, I'm sorry. It's for some reason whatever it's doing on the StreamYard, it's not. I don't know what's going on here with the image here. Why our streaming platform's doing this, but appreciate it. And congratulations and good luck to every team that's made it. Yes, indeed, it is definitely playoff time here. And appreciate everybody watching us here on wherever you're watching us at, YouTube, Facebook, X/Twitter, or even on Twitch. So we got that Twitch going. And Chris, I mean, hey, it's hard to believe playoffs are already here. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah, playoffs are here. Go ahead and go with your thing. Playoffs are here, man. It's already hard to believe.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting season and very eventful end of the season, to say the least, with Miami Central and a lot of other teams, Sports Academy, being kicked out of the contention for the state championship.
Yeah, and just to talk about that real quick here before we kind of actually get going with some of the stuff here that we're going to have Mike Rideout on. He's going to actually be our first guest, and we're actually going to go ahead and get him on because he actually will be traveling a little later. So we're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. We're going to kind of have Mike Rideout on. We were supposed to have John Santucci on, but because we had to postpone until the morning, we're not going to have John Santucci on, but we're still going to have Bob Putnam from Prime Time Preps later on. And then we're going to have Larry Bluestein, the GOAT of all goats in the Sunshine State, from Prep Red Zone, Florida, and LarryBluestein.com. We'll have Larry Bluestein on here. And Zach Lesnar, good morning to you. And then Mr. De La Hoya 05 says, let's go. Yes, everybody is like, let's go here. So I'm going to make sure that we get Mike on here. Go ahead and get him All right, so I'll go ahead and get him signed on. But yes, as you brought up here, Chris, about the First Academy issue, that actually kind of ended up putting, I think we would have had the brackets a little sooner. Yesterday, had the FHSAA had not had to deal with an appeal from First Academy. What happened kind of set the table to the situation real quick, if for those might have been trying to catch up here. First Academy, they were put into a situation that they were basically Friday afternoon. They were handed down basically the hammer by the FHSAA with penalties over like totaling $36,000, forfeiture of all 8 wins so far this season. And actually now my understanding is that the 10th game was actually forfeited as well, I believe, looking at it, because it is showing them 0-10, even though they won that game Friday night at Clearwater Calvary Christian. That got reversed and put into a forfeit. And the other situation there is that First Academy banned from the playoffs for this year and 2025. So 2 years worth of playoffs right there out the door for First Academy. And there were some things. Stephen Moffitt was basically, he doesn't have a penalty now, so they've kind of actually pulled that off the table. But the players are going to be free to transfer to other schools and get back to what's going over. Get them back into back to wherever they want to be at, and they're not penalizing the players. So that's the one thing, because FHA executive director Craig Damon said this, Chris. That they could have penalized the players for improperly transferring, but they did not do that because they put it on the onus of the adults to done the right thing, and they had time to fix it, and they did not. So That's the situation with First Academy. We also had Miami Central. That was another one that came out last week. Miami Central, you're not going to see Miami Central in the playoffs. And I actually kind of the loot off of what Chris told me last night. Chris, the playoff bracket is going to kind of feel naked without Miami Central in there.
Yeah, it does. It does. Just looking at the bracket, Miami Central not being there is just very odd. It's only happened twice in the last 20 years. So
it really
this is the third time in the last 20 years.
I mean, and when we go back to looking at the last time, I think Miami Central missed the playoffs. I have to go back to 2016, and I think that's because two teams by name, believe Northwestern and Central kept them out. I mean, not Central, Northwestern and Norland kept them out of the playoffs. And it's been a hot minute since we've seen Miami Central not be in the playoffs. But an eligible player, all 8 games won by the Rockets. They had to forfeit those games. And I know this is Emory. I don't know why we're having the issue with Facebook with seeing who's commenting, but trying to figure out why Divide the Villages. What I'm gonna have to do here is pull it up here. On the other side here, and then we got Mike right out about to join us here. But what I'm trying to see is that Charles Bell, yes, Charles Bell here. So this is Charles Bell commenting. We don't know why we're having the connection issue with Facebook here, but there was some trouble here earlier this week. But it's Charles Bell, and he's trying to find out why the Villages got in the playoffs over Astronaut when they beat them this past week. Okay, so the situation here is this, Charles, real quick, to kind of address that real quick, is that it basically came down to strength of schedule. And the Villages played a much tougher schedule. And Wiregrass Ranch final game, with who the Villages did play, their final game against Mitchell, that ended up coming in strong for them to help for the Villages to get in over Astronaut. So, yes, we know that was they beat them. But again, strength of schedule matters, and when you play weaker teams, it's going to end up costing you, and that's what happened from Astronaut. So, yes, indeed, and we're going to have Mike right out on here for a moment. And hey, Mark Cannon, good morning to you. Breakfast with the Drive, yes, to Drive the State Show. Glad you're here. Sorry about last night again. Just some ISP issues and everything, but we're going to have Mike right out on here in a moment from Main Street Daily News. And yes, we're going to talk about it. Sometimes head-to-head doesn't always necessarily mean everything, so we'll find out exactly what that entails here as we go through. But we're getting ready to have Mike right out on here, and then we'll go ahead and bring Mike right out on from Main Street Daily News. Good morning, Mike. How you doing? And appreciate you being flexible with us with the show and everything. And it actually kind of worked out for you and your benefit, because I know you had a basketball media day last night from the Gainesville area, but now that we've had over 12 hours to kind of digest things, Mike, let's kind of kick this off. You were at Eastside South Sumter Thursday night, which would have been the last night of the game, and then Thursday night being the last night of games in the state. I mean, Eastside, all they had to do was win it.
Yeah, but at least it wasn't a win. Don't win and you're not in. They were able to at least get an at-large bid, but all they had to do was win, and they would have won a district title, and it would have been their third straight district title under Coach Harold Gator Hoskins. Just offensively kind of struggled. They did move the ball a little bit, but mistakes were costly for them. I remember there was one, I thought, kind of the turning point of the game when South Sumter fumbled the football inside the 5-yard line of Eastside. Eastside recovered, and then a few plays later, Eastside turned it right back over to them, and then South Sumter scored. South Sumter returned the second half kickoff, 94 yards for a touchdown. That was pretty much the dagger for them. Ended up being the game-winning score, in fact, and Eastside ended up losing that game 21-7. But, again, shout out to Gator. He's led this team in his 3 years now to 3 straight playoff appearances. They were back-to-back district champions. Great year for them overall. But they've got to go to Bishop Moore in Orlando for the first round of the state playoffs. But at least they're in. So, you get in, and then anything can happen, and at least they're in as the number 7 seed in that region.
No, absolutely. And Chris, if you got anything you want to ask Mike, you can go ahead and do that while we're doing this. But Mike, looking at the region, your region with Main Street Daily News, which covers Gainesville and most parts of North Central Florida, but I know you sometimes you'll see teams from right outside the coverage area like Ocala and stuff. And quite a few teams in the region that have made the playoffs, especially when we go to look at the rural, because this year rural classification a little bit different setup in terms of the playoff brackets there. And with most of the teams in the rural classification in this area making the bracket either between the state championship bracket or the invitational bracket, there's going to be a lot of football to cover over here over the next 5 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think I count 14 teams in the Main Street Daily News coverage area. We cover all of Alachua County. We cover Bradford County, Union County, the Tri-County area. So there are some Tri-County teams in the rural playoffs. We also go as far north as Suwannee County, and Suwannee's in the playoffs as well. So yeah, plenty of football coming up, and we do have a handful of teams that are going to be at home. I was actually kind of surprised that Buchholz got a number 2 seed in their region.
Let's talk about Let's talk about that, because that was even for me surprising to see Buchholz get a number 2 when even Coach Mark Whittemore was hitting there promoting that they were probably going to be on the road at Oviedo.
Yeah, and they've played a difficult schedule. You look at the fact that they've lost 3 games, but they lost to some really good competition, including Bradenton Manatee. All 3 of their losses were 1-score games. One of those losses was to the number 1 seed in that region, Nice, and that was an overtime loss. So, Mark Whittemore back for his second stint as the head coach of the Bobcats. Justin Williams is a primetime player for them. I know he's got, I think, an offer from Ole Miss, an offer from South Florida. He's a special player. When you look at the fact that they lost so many good players, guys like Miles Graham last year, the fact that they're in the playoffs and this highly ranked or seeded, really, Mark Whittemore deserves a big shout out for the job that he has done in getting this team back to the playoffs. They've been to 3 straight state semifinal games, and now here they are will get a chance to at least host a couple of playoff home games.
No, absolutely. And with the playoff games, Chris, you got anything you want to ask? Go ahead and ask him while we're looking at this, because some of the teams that we're looking at this here, I mean, Buchholz being the biggest surprise, getting the number 2 seed, considering that most people were projecting them a 3 seed. But, let's talk about the rural classification here. I mean, look at it. For most of the season here, Mike, Hawthorne was sitting there when the rankings were coming out. Hawthorne was sitting like 2, 3, maybe 4, but Union County, number 1. And all of a sudden, everything flipped in the Week 10 game between Union and Chiefland. And Union County had the win basically almost locked in until 4 seconds left, and Chiefland took a 30-29 victory over Union County, and that kind of flipped the rankings a little bit upside down their head, because Union County thinking, oh well, we may have a chance to be 1. Now they're sitting there, they're 3 instead, and Hawthorne pushed ahead to get the 1 seed.
Yeah, I talked to CI Cornelius Ingram about this last night at Media Day, because he's the head coach of the girls basketball team. CI is going for his 3rd straight football state title. He's also going to be going for his 3rd straight girls basketball state championship. and I told CI, I said, is it just me, or does it seem like here you guys are back-to-back state champions, but I feel like you guys have just kind of flown in under the radar. And he said, I feel the same way. He said there hasn't been any pressure to repeat or three-peat this year. He feels pretty confident about his team going into the postseason. But you're right, Union County kind of stole the headlines because they were, at one time they were the only undefeated team in our coverage area. And then going into that Chiefland game, they were unbeaten. And that's a game that came down to the final 10 seconds of the game. Chiefland scored a touchdown, I think a 4-yard touchdown pass to get them within 1. They went for 2. John Adams ran in the 2-point conversion, and Chiefland got a big win. And, Adam Gore has done a great job. He's back for his 3rd stint as the head coach. So Chiefland, now they are home against Williston. That's a rematch of the game that was played at the beginning of the year. It was an 8-point game earlier this year. But in that game, Williston turned it over, I want to say 8 or 9 times in that game. So they're really looking forward to another opportunity to play Chiefland. But Chiefland's playing really good football, got a really good defense. At one time, I think Chiefland did 5 guys that averaged 10 yards or more per carry. So they've got some athletes on that team. But they've dropped to a number 4 seed. Union County is the number 3 seed. I think we could see Union County and Madison County in that state semifinal game. So certainly possible. I'd love to see Hawthorne and Union County in a state championship game, and we could get that. I know a couple years ago, Union County and Hawthorne played in Lake Butler, and Union County took a 21-0 lead, and Hawthorne came back and actually won that game with less than 30 seconds to play in the game. So they haven't forgotten about that. So I'm really looking forward to the rural classification. But I do feel like Hawthorne is going to get to the state semifinals, and then with an opportunity to host one of those teams, Chiefland or Union County. I think Hawthorne would get the win playing at home. So it's played into their favor, getting that number 1 seed.
Shifting gears to Class 3A, you got Sewanee and you have Eastside sitting up there at the 7 seeds. Now, how do you think they're going to fare against those teams up there? They're talking about 2 seeds.
For Sewanee, they've got to go to Tallahassee and play a pretty good Godby team. So I'm not sure that they get out of the first round, to be quite honest. But it's certainly possible. Turnovers, those they can change a game. So in the Region 2. Eastside, I mentioned, having to go to Bishop Moore, they're kind of in the same situation because Sewanee's a 7 seed in their region. Eastside's a 7 seed in their region. It's always tough to go on the road in the playoffs. You're going to have to play near perfect football. And Eastside didn't do that on Thursday night against South Sumter. So they've got to be, much improved going into that game against Bishop Moore. And, Sewanee will be faced with that same situation. It's always tough to go on the road in the playoffs. And to knock off a 2 seed, in the playoffs is even a bigger challenge. And both those teams will have to face that situation.
No, absolutely. And looking at a couple of other things here, I mean, outside of this, Columbia had been sitting outside the playoff rankings. Mm-hmm. They've been, they've been in the bubble every single week this season until the final rankings came out, and they got just enough to jump over Rickards to get in. I mean, talk about Columbia here, because Columbia started out basically in the cellar this year. I mean, they had to climb up the fight for this and to finish the season 5-5. I mean, the Tigers get a rematch, which some people said, hey, if we had known that they were going to extend the season by a week, Columbia would have taken St. Augustine week 12 and not played it before Hurricane Milton came through. Yeah,
well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, they were fortunate to finish 500 because they started the year at 2-5. They lost 4 straight games. Now, again, to good opponents. So you get rewarded, obviously, for playing a tough schedule. They played at Trinity Christian in Jacksonville and lost. They lost at home to St. Augustine. They lost on the road to Jacksonville Bowls. So those are some obviously some tough opponents. But then they were able to get on a little streak at the end of the year. They beat the teams they should have beaten: Orange Park Ridgeview, Green Coast Springs Clay, North Miami Beach. They won their final 3 games of the year. And really they won the 2 of those 3 games. Their defense pitched a shutout. So they are starting, I guess, to kind of peak a little bit at the right time. But because they played that tough schedule, that's why they got into the playoffs. Now we'll see. It will be tough for them to go on the road against St. Augustine, who beat them 27-6. And that game was in Lake City. Now it's in St. Augustine. So I certainly give the advantage to St. Augustine. They're the top seed. Columbia got a number 8 seed in that region in 4A Region 1. But, Columbia was able to earn a spot based on that tough schedule, that tough stretch that they had, even though they lost those games. Just being able to play that tough of a schedule helped them get into the postseason as an at-large.
Now that we're about a year removed from the Metro Suburban split and back into the old classification that we know now, What's your impressions of how it's worked out in the last couple of years?
All right, so repeat that again. I'm sorry.
Now that we're a year removed from the metro suburban split,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
what are your impressions of the way the playoffs have shaped out compared to this year and last year?
I mean, that's a good question. In the opening round of the playoffs, you typically, you kind of separate the pretenders from the contenders. So it might even be too early to tell. I thought the FHSA was on the right path, when they did the metro and suburban. I don't know. I'd like to hear y'all's opinions on that, because I'm a little mixed on it. I thought that what they were doing, was on the right track. But looking at the playoffs and how they shape up, I don't know that I notice a difference right now. First round playoffs, based on seedings, you're going to have the stronger teams are going to win in the first round. So the question therein lies, moving forward in the postseason, did they make the right decision to do so?
No, and that's a good question in my opinion. Honestly, with this is that with Metro Suburban, I feel like the FHA was on the right path. I know there was resistance, in certain sections of the state, but when it came to looking at it, when we looked, okay, yeah, you're still gonna have some games where they're gonna be wide margins. There's gonna be some blowouts along the way. That's gonna happen in the regular season. I mean, you get a few of those. But during the playoffs, especially as you got into the later rounds, into the state championship game, you could throw the Class 1M game out the last 2 years against between Sherman and Madonna and Clearwater Central Catholic. Throw that out as the anomaly. Every other game was close. There was no running clocks. There was no blowouts.
Right.
My fear is that the state championship games, maybe outside the rural classification this year, a lot of those games are going to end up where they're going to end up in a situation where they're going to be, instead of being this close, they're going to be out of the range, and that doesn't make for fun football when we're talking about this in that situation. And honestly, I'm interested to see what the margin of victories are going to be like here over the next few weeks, because if we've seen anything, if there's any indicator that we've seen, the potential of some blowouts along the way here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges in this situation, but let's look back to the last few weeks where we've had, quite a few 70, 80, and even 190 point game. If we're seeing those kind of, between the good, the really strong teams and the really bad teams, or even some of them, right in the middle of the road teams doing that, I'm afraid of what's going to happen here. Because there is a couple matchups on here that I'm just like kind of wondering, what's going to happen here. I'm kind of curious, especially like, okay, how's Trinity Catholic going to hold up against Providence? I mean, Trinity Catholic, they get in with the 2 wins, they're 2-8, they're district champs. Yeah, it's thing. And then actually, I got a comment sitting here. Mark Cannon just brought this up. State finals were much better with Metro Suburban. Very disappointed. And yes. So yeah. I think Mark is agreeing with you too, kind of in a way, because it's actually, it's disappointing that we're in this situation, but this is what the hand. These are what the cards are dealt here. Like
you said, the rule classification is the exception. I think even in the state championship game, it's going to be competitive, and we've already seen how competitive it is. For example, just even last year, Union County, or not Union County, but Hawthorne and Madison County. That state championship game and the rule classification has been really close for the last several years.
No, absolutely. And Mike, looking at it, which game are you looking forward to this coming week with the games that are on the slate?
Yeah, I think for us, the game that we're looking at probably broadcasting, I think we're also going to be partnering with the NFHS network as well. They're going to take our feed, and I think the game that I'm going to broadcast is that Buchholz game against Orlando Evans. I kind of feel like, honestly, maybe that Chief and Williston game, would be a pretty good game. But, the fact that Buchholz is going to be at home at Citizens Field, I like the opportunity to broadcast not only that, but then second round, now it gets a little tougher, because I've got a potential Buchholz Pace game. I've got a potential rematch between Bradford and Newberry. Second round game should be pretty interesting. But I think for this Friday, I'm going to broadcast that Buchholz Evans game.
No, absolutely. And of course, Buchholz getting in there with that 2 seeds surprised a lot of people. I think even surprised the Buchholz people a little bit, getting into the playoffs. But Mike, any final thoughts, Chris, for Mike before we head towards our first water break here? Then we're going to take a look at the brackets.
Yeah, what are your overall impressions of the bracket from the statewide perspective?
To be honest, I haven't even really looked at it. I had about over a 4-hour broadcast last night for high school basketball media day. And that's why I was actually glad that Josh had technical difficulties, because even though he pushed me back to a 9:10 p.m. time slot, I don't even know if I would have made it in time for that. It would have been pretty close. I've printed the brackets. I've highlighted the teams in the area. And honestly, that's as far as I've gotten. I was uploading our broadcast that we did yesterday for Media Day. I am definitely looking forward to the postseason. It's a fun time of year. It's that old saying, the cream rises to the top. So I kind of suspect the teams that are the higher ranked teams, they're going to be the ones to, at least getting to a region final or a state semifinal. I think those are the types of teams that we'll see. So it should be a lot of fun.
Sorry. I just lost internet on my thing.
Oh boy.
Hopefully Josh can get that internet back up and running. One question I do have for you while Josh is trying to fix his internet.
Sorry about that. I lost internet. The first academy issue in Orlando, how does that affect the team in your area?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, to be quite honest, because I don't think we have a team in that classification that's going to be able to make any type of a run. But what was TFA? What class were they?
They're class 1A. They were in region 2, so they would have potentially seen somebody from 1A region 1, and that probably would have potentially be Trinity Catholic.
That's what I thought. I thought they were
PK Young.
Yeah, well, PK Young was, certainly fortunate to get into the postseason. They got blown out by Trinity Catholic in the district championship game, and they're the only team in our area, coverage area, that got into the postseason in that classification. So the first academy certainly wouldn't have affected, anything as far as our coverage area goes.
Oh, absolutely. Well. No, absolutely. No, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here and get the show started. I know you got to go watch some college football now, but
yeah,
but no, appreciate it, and we'll see you during the playoffs here and talk more about that. Appreciate it, Mike.
All right, sounds good. Y'all have a good day.
Appreciate it. That was Mike right out from Main Street Daily News joining us here on the Drive the State show. I'm trying to hopefully the internet will stay stable because it just all of a sudden just went to take a little blurb, but it's okay. We're back. I'm back. Hopefully everything continued on the other side with Chris without issue. But as we roll along here, and we're going to take our first 2-minute water break here, Chris, and then we're going to look at the playoff brackets. We're going to start deep diving these brackets a little bit because there is definitely some interesting matchups. And guys, if you got a question, got a comment, I see some comments here. The Facebook comments, I can see them if I keep up on the page. I can see who's commenting on the feed, but I will pull up your comments here when we come back after we take this 2-minute water break. We'll be right back here on the Drive the State show right here on FortHSFootball.com and the FortHSFootball.com social media networks. All right, welcome back here to the Drive the State show here on FloydHSFootball.com and the FloydHSFootball.com social media networks. Joshua Wilson there, Christopher Lyke on the other side there on the other video. And guys, I see your comments here. I gotta ask you for one thing, and I know this is a big discussion, and we'll get to it when we get to Class 2A, but I know there's a lot of upsetness, especially for those with Astronaut. They beat the Villages Thursday night. Didn't get in. The Villages got in. Okay, I'm not the FHSAA. I can tell y'all that. I can't tell you what it goes in the formula because I don't know myself. All I know is there's certain my understanding is there's certain components, especially now that margin of victory was put into the factor this year, and then the strength of schedule is a big component of it as well. So again, I can't right the wrong that y'all feel. In that situation, I hear y'all. It's for us, we're trying to understand, and so we're gonna do that and look at all that. And it's John Kelly. I see your comment. Yeah, we're gonna do the entire state, which is that we had this one region here that we just kind of had to switch our little our show timeline up just a little bit because we had to put Mike Wright out first. But we're gonna actually get into all the brackets and all the classifications here in just a moment here. And Mark Cannon is looking for more competitive games in the first two rounds over quality of teams. And I absolutely agree. We got to look and see what we get here with the quality of games, because if we don't get the quality games, we're gonna have to see what's going to happen there. But yes, indeed, and we're gonna kind of get into it here in just a moment here. And guess what, Chris? We are going to start this off with the rural classification. So let's get that going here. All right, as we start off with we're going to start off with the invitational part of the bracket of rural classification here, Chris. And you take the lead, my man. Go ahead and tell us what we've got here, because this is interesting for the first year of the rural classification.
Okay, the number one overall seed is Baker. They'll bye week up to the next week. They'll face the winner of Trenton and Sneads. Trenton and Sneads both losing record 2-7, 4-6, and then followed by Jefferson County. They have a bye. They're going to play next week, and they get the winner of Dixie County, and we have to go.
No, absolutely. And as we take a look at that here, we're going to take a look at the next part of that bracket. And we've got the bottom half of that bracket where you see Port St. Joe sitting there at 5-5. Got Wildwood sitting there in Hamilton County in that 7-10 spot. Wildwood 3-6, Hamilton County 2-6. And then you got Franklin County 6-4, hitting that 3 spot. And Franklin County, for them, what's interesting is that this is actually their first earned playoff spot versus where the other couple of playoff spots in school history have come as a result of modifications to the bracket due to Hurricane Michael and then to COVID in 2020. Mm-hmm. And so Franklin County earning their first earned playoff spot with a actual playoff format from the FHSAA that is actually earned through the power rankings. But then Fort Meade in that 6th spot and Pearson Taylor in that 11th spot. So 12 teams in the invitational, Chris, here. And these 12 teams decided to go ahead and continue on their season. Some of the teams that were also in part of the rural classification opted out, including teams like Marathon Downstate. They decided that it was just that financial reasons. A lot of schools, for my understanding, saying it's like it was pretty much financial reasons. It wasn't necessarily ready to go move on the basketball season. It was just the financial considerations. But what y'all are kind of seeing here with the rural class, I can kind of give you all this with this part right here. You're kind of seeing what could be coming to the rest of the classifications in about potentially as early as 2026, depending on how this works this year and next year with how the brackets work in rural classification. But Chris, as we roll along here, we've got to go into now the big bracket, and that is the state championship bracket. And lead it off with the top half for us.
Okay, the top half, we get the number one seed, Hawthorne. They finished with a 7-1 record, and they will be facing against Branford, 8-2.
No, 6-3. Branford 6-3.
6-3. Cottondale with 8-9 the Cottondale and Lafayette, 8 and 9 seed, they'll be playing each other at Cottondale, and then you have Chiefland 9-1. They play Williston at 6-4, and then also in the 5-12 seeds, Jay and Fort White will be playing each other.
No, absolutely. And kind of the follow up here on some of this, you got, like I said, we were talking with Mike Wright out a bit ago about Hawthorne jumping to that 1 seed. That helped them a lot. Chiefland, they were sitting there between 4 and 5 fluctuating, and they settled on that. You get them settling on that 4 seed, but getting that rematch with their in-county rival in Levy County, Williston, rematch from week 1. Williston would love to have this one back. And so Chiefland's going to host this matchup here. And that's going to be a huge game there in the state championship side of the bracket. But Jay, 9-1, one of their best seasons they have had since Elijah Bell was the head coach at Jay, and that's been a long time there for the Royals out in the Panhandle. So a big seed there for the Jay Royals. And then as we go into our second portion of the state championship bracket, you got to look at this. Madison County 6-3, sitting there at the 2 seed. And they only had 1 game canceled this year, and I believe that was going to be against Rains, and that would have been a huge matchup there. But Madison County still finishing up with a pretty good, strong strength of schedule here. But they're going to host Moorhaven, all the way coming out of Glades County, and they're in the southern portion of Florida in the peninsula. So Moorhaven with a long road trip up to Madison this week. Asilla Christian, how about this? Asilla Christian, the perfect 10-0, but that perfect 10-0 got them only a 7 seed. And if we look at it, it comes down to strength of schedule. And but Asilla Christian, still congratulations to them with the 10-0 perfect regular season. There, hit the wrong button there. I'm trying to get my applause there. There we go. There we go. My keypads. I got a bunch of keypads here on my mixer board, and I just have to make sure I'm on the right setting here. But Asilla Christian, the only team actually in the world class to go perfect record right there this season. And they're going to be hosting Blountstown, Union County, 8-1. See, Union County again. They were projected the number 1 seed for most weeks, even up until like the last week. And but Union County falls to that 3 seed after falling to Chiefland in that 30-29 game. And they actually, I think I should have changed that out. That's supposed to be Holmes County at 6, and Holmes County, that somehow I screwed that up when I was getting the graphics done. But that's Holmes County actually in that graphic. And Holmes County, they are going to be sitting there coming to Union County, and then you got Pahokee and Chipley sitting there in that 6-11 spot. Pahokee 6-3, Chipley 7-2. So a long road trip for the Chipley Tigers, going all the way to Palm Beach County to the muck to play Pahokee. I mean, that's a long road trip, Chris. There's some long road trips.
That's like what, a 600-mile trip or something?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're gonna shoot. Hopefully, if they're thinking about it, maybe they got some hotel reservations somewhere, because some of these teams are going to need with the trips that they're going to be making here this week. But Chris, now I think it's let's talk about the games here that we've got here, the best games to watch. So we're going to focus on the Rural State Championship bracket when it comes to the best games. Yeah, I was looking at that. Sorry, Mark. It was the graphic. These are custom graphics actually that we have done here. Chris came up with the template, and I love what we've got here with this, because it definitely gives a colorful personality to the show here. And only deserving for what the schools have done and being able to get to the playoffs here. But let's talk about this here with these matchups here. I like this one in the first one coming. These are the 4 best games. So when we do the best games to watch in the rest of the classifications, it's going to be 1 per region. But since this is a little different with the rural classification, it's definitely going to be more fun to watch. And yes, it really, like, looking at this, starting with the first game, I think is going to be really good to watch here in this first round here. Lafayette 6-4 at Cottondale, and Lafayette has played some pretty good competition in this area here. But Cottondale, I got to say Cottondale 9-0. Actually, I'm sorry, Cottondale was the other team in the rural classification that did. Oh, sorry, there we go. Hitting the button there for the applause, because Cottondale was the other team. Sorry, I apologize about that on Cottondale. the only other team in the world class to go undefeated on the regular season. I'm really interested to see how Lafayette handles the trip out to Cottondale. Time zone change. This is going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be closer than what some people might think. I think Lafayette's going to give Cottondale some trouble. But it really, again, that 8-9 matchup, this is where you expect is a close ball game, usually in these matchups where the seedings are right next to each other, especially like when we look at the other brackets, where the 4-5 games are usually going to 4-5 and 3-6 usually ends up being the best games of the first round. But Chiefland and Williston, that's another one that I've honed in on because, again, it's a rematch from week 1. Chiefland surprised a lot of people winning that game, which started off the season of winning going 9-1. Honestly, Williston would love to have this back. I think there was a lot of high expectations for the Red Devils this year. Not that it didn't pan out as much as that they would have liked to, 6-4 on the season, but they get a redemption shot at Chiefland. And then looking at number 10, Bluntstown, going to number 7, Acilla Christian. Why I pointed this particular game here, honestly, this particular game, I feel like, okay, this is going to be Acilla Christian's biggest test. They haven't played necessarily the strongest schedule in the world classification. Bluntstown, however, has played some tough teams along the way. And honestly, I got to say that Acilla Christian, maybe this is where I could see that this is a 10 seed could knock off a 7 seed here in this situation here. And Bluntstown, just honestly, I feel like it's played the better schedule. And of course, the wrong road trip for Chipley down to Pahokee. I like to see what's going to happen there at Anquan Bolden Stadium, see how Chipley handles this against the Blue Devils with the long road trip, because Chipley has had some history of deep runs over the last few years. Can it start here at Pahokee? Long road trip is going to really test them, not just physically, but mentally, especially being on the bus for 6 to 7 hours, pretending how Coach Mark how Coach Buchanan breaks that up. I'm going to be really saying, if Chipley can break that road trip up into 2 segments, they'd be much better off than going down there on a straight through down the Pahokee. And Chris, any thoughts there on these best games to watch in the world? Because I think the world class is going to be fun to watch.
I'm interested to see how Acilla Christian does against Bluntstown, to be honest with you. Like you said, they haven't played the best schedule, but keeping that undefeated record intact, that's going to be a very interesting task to see.
No, absolutely. And Mark Cannon says he loves that at Anquan Bolden. I love that Anquan Bolden Stadium at Pahokee. Yes, Anquan Bolden Stadium. That is the name of the stadium because Anquan Bolden actually donated the money to rebuild to build a new stadium there. I think it's been over a decade now since that last happened, mm-hmm. And we definitely appreciate that. And so Danny, thinks Madison and Hawthorne for round 3 at the Villages. Oh yeah, so thinking that might be a state championship prediction. But what I'll do later over the weekend and into early next week is I'll put my predictions out of who I think is going to make it through these brackets here, and that's going to be fun to watch and see what happens there. But yeah, that is a look at the world classification, and guess what? That means we're going to head into Class 1A. And we're going to get right in. All right. Let's see. Oh, what happened there? My Class 1A bracket, it didn't put the one thing. Let me pull that up real quick and let me get that situated there, guys. Because somehow when the bracket thing, it did not transfer over. But so let me do this real quick here so I can pull it up, because I can actually bring it up here in a different manner here. And I'm going to do that real quick here so that way I can bring that part up here. Give me 1 second here to pull that up here, Chris. But Class 1, this is going to be interesting to watch and see what happens here with this particular classification here, because, again, we talked about what happened with First Academy, and First Academy not being in the playoffs. That kind of shifted things up as we're going to start looking at these brackets here.
Yeah, you got some interesting matchups that really shook up a lot of things in the entire grand scheme of things. Not just in one region, but another region, and it goes further on down the line.
No, absolutely. And there's that 1A Region 1 bracket right there, Chris. And I'll let you go ahead and start to lead the way on that one.
Okay, you got the number 8 seed Trinity Catholic who will be hosting the number 1 seed Providence at the district champion. Always will get the home game over the at-large teams. Providence did not win the district, even though they are the number 1 seed in the region. Going on to the next matchup, you have University Christian against Impact Christian. That game will be at University Christian. The University Christian is the district champion there. And then also going down to the 2-7 matchup, Trinity Christian from Jacksonville. They are the 1A2 district champion. They'll be playing PK Young, who gets in on the at-large bid. And then the final game in this region, it's St. John Paul out of Tallahassee, and they will be playing McClay. And St. John Paul will be the district champion. At the virtue of being a district champion, they will be hosting that game.
No, absolutely. And Impact Christian, to note them on the Impact Christian, Chris, this is their first FHSAA playoff berth as a FHSAA program. So congratulations there to Impact Christian making the playoffs for the first time. And yes, indeed, it's really cool to see what we've got here with these teams here as we roll along here. And we're going to keep it rolling here with 1A Region 2 here. I'll make sure that I've got it. There we go. 1A Region 2 here. As we do that, we've got Clearwater Central Catholic sitting here on this bracket here. Clearwater Central Catholic, number 1 seed. They will be hosting Holy Trinity. So this is the bracket that really had some major impact when we talk about Class 1A Region 2 here, because Clearwater Central Catholic got the 1 seed after First Academy, who had been projected the 1 seed for the most of the season. First Academy getting banned from the playoffs, having to forfeit all their games. Clearwater Central Catholic jumps to that 1 seed, and in the process, kind of everybody jumped up, and Holy Trinity gets in. Holy Trinity had been on the outside looking into making the playoffs, and here you go. This really gets them into the playoffs now at 5-4. So Clearwater Central Catholic 8-2 will be hosting Holy Trinity. Carrollwood Day 6-3. They're the 1A7 champion. They are going to be hosting Victory Christian, a team from their own district in 1A7. Victory Christian 7-2. Carrollwood Day won the district championship, beat both Victory Christian and Lakeland Christian, but in that 4-5 matchup. And you get them down there 2-7. Lakeland Christian 8-1 at large over Crescent City. You get Crescent City 8-2, but Lakeland Christian will be on the road to Crescent City because Crescent City won the District 1A5 championship. So, and some people have been asking about Lakeland Christian on here, Chris. Why did Lakeland Christian get a higher seed? And some of that comes down to they came down to strength of schedule again, and also it's not just the strength of schedule, but also how your opponent's stuff done and what your opponent's it goes down infinity. It's not like RPA where it's just looking at two sets of things in the data. It's going further and further along, and my understanding, it loops back several times in how Max Preps calculates these rankings up and with the formula. Now, the one thing I will say this on the ranking for the FHSAA is that the football rankings are done in-house by Max Preps, whereas what you see on maxpreps.com is actually published by Cal Preps. That's a third-party vendor to Max Preps. So there's a reason why it's a little different. It is different compared to what you see on maxpreps.com to what is saw on the FHSAA with the FHSAA power rankings. Plus, there's the forfeiture factor that is actually included, where Max Preps does not retroactively put in forfeits in their games on maxpreps.com. So those are two of the biggest differences there that have to be accounted for in this situation. And then that 3-6 matchup, Melbourne Central Catholic, who became the 1A6 district champion because of First Academy forfeiting those games. Melbourne Central Catholic will be hosting Orlando Christian Prep as an at-large team who is 4-5 and in that 3-6 spot. But they got some interesting matchups here that we're going to look at here in this region 2. But Chris, on to region 3 here, and I'll let you take that one by the wheel there and tell everybody what we got here.
Okay, the number 1 and 8 seeds, 2 district champions facing off against each other. Cardinal Newman and Evangelical Christians. Those two will be playing at Cardinal Newman. Cardinal Newman Newman has a 7-1 record, and then you have going down to the 4-5 matchup. St. John Newman at a 5-4 at-large bid against Community School Naples. Community School Naples will be playing that game in Naples. So interesting matchup between two Naples schools there. And then going down to the 2-7 matchup, you have First Baptist out of Naples. They will be playing. They are the district champion there, and they'll be playing Southwest Florida Christian. The 3-6 matchup, you have Benjamin, and then you have Northside Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that said, you got those two teams there. You got, with these teams here, the Community School Naples and St. John Newman matchup could be really interesting here. But Cardinal Newman sitting there, that 1 seed, they still holding that 1 seed despite the fact they lost to Buchholz in week 11 there, losing that game 14-7 to Buchholz on the road. Some people thought that there was a chance that Cardinal Newman was going to win that game, finish this regular season 8-0, but Cardinal Newman still holding that number 1 seed despite the loss there at the end of the regular season. But going into Class 1A Region 4 here, looking at this, you got Chaminade Madonna, a defending state champion, sitting there in Class 1A. 8-2, district champion 1A-14. They'll be hosting another district foe. St. John Paul II has got an at-large bid at 4-5. St. Andrews will be hosting Archbishop Carroll, both of them district champions, 1A-13 for St. Andrews, 1A-15 for Archbishop Carroll. So Archbishop Carroll will be on the road at St. Andrews in that 4-5 matchup. True North, a 7-3 team, getting an at-large bid. However, they are going to be on the road at number 7 Palmer Trinity, who is the 1A-16 champion. And then we've got this real interesting matchup in 3-6 where Miami Edison is hosting at 6-4 at-large team that's against Somerset Academy Q, who's in their playoffs for the first time as well at 6-4 and at-large bid as well. So again, some interesting in the South in this Region 4 bracket, but honestly, when it comes to the number 1 seed compared to the rest of the teams in this region, it is a wide margin in terms of what the final power rankings said. Chaminade Madonna just really played the toughest schedule of all schedules, and their 2 losses, St. John Bosco and Blanche Ely. That's it. After that, they went on an 8-game win streak.
Yeah. So, very interesting. Very interesting how Chaminade Madonna goes stacked up against the other region if they can get past this region.
I don't think that's going to be hard for them to get past this region. It's who they're going to see on the other side. Because some people are thinking, can we get rematch of Clearwater Central Catholic and Chaminade Madonna? Honestly, at first I thought, I'll tell you this, when we were looking at before everything happened with First Academy, I thought, well, shoot, are we headed for a collision course between First Academy and Chaminade Madonna? Well, that's not happening. That's off the table now. So a rematch of Chaminade Madonna, Clearwater Central Catholic, I could see that very much happening again here. So as we roll along here with the best games to watch. Now, I pointed out the Providence Trinity Catholic game. I'll tell you this right now with this game. Why did I pull the 1-8 matchup out of this? Because I'm interested to see, because you can throw Trinity Catholic's record out at 2-8 here in this situation because they played a really tough schedule. My thought is this: let's see how they go up against Providence. If Providence can fight hard on this one, can Providence come out with a victory? But Trinity Catholic, this is not a team you want to write off in the 8 seed just because Trinity Catholic's only 8 seed because of their record, not because they can't play tough football. They can play tough football because John Brantley III will have them ready. It will absolutely. This game could be down to the wire. So this is where a 1-8 matchup. I really encourage y'all to watch this one because it's rare that I pull a 1-8 matchup in terms of best games to watch, but this is definitely one to watch and keep an eye on here. And then Region 2, where with the best game to watch, this rematch between Victory Christian and Carrollwood Day. This is going to be a tough battle. Don't get me wrong; it will be a tough battle between the Storm and the Patriots because, again, it all came down to this game for the district championship in 1A7. And to get a rematch like this, it is going to be huge for both teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if Victory Christian finds a way to come out and stun Carrollwood Day, because, again, it's hard to beat the same team twice in the season because you already know their tendency, so you can game plan around that, especially if you lost that game the first time around. Now, sometimes, you can beat them twice in the same season, but, again, it's rather difficult. Again, another rematch here that comes from the regular season. St. John Newman and Community School in Naples. It's going to be a battle here between these two teams. And honestly, at the end of the day, this is another game, again, going to come right down to the wire. And honestly, again, this is going to be a really, really strong matchup to keep a watch on in this 4-5 matchup. And then, of course, you got Archbishop Carroll at St. Andrews. Going to be an interesting matchup, but Archbishop Carroll, I think, is going to be really interesting to see what happens there with them as we roll along. All right, let's take a look at, let's pull up the thing here. We're going to go into Class 2A. All right, let's take a look at Class 2A. And Chris, let's lead this off with Class 2A Region 1.
All right, we have Gadsden County. As a district champion, they'll be facing Baldwin as the 1-8 seed, and Baldwin coming in with a 5-5 record. And then you have Florida High, the Giant Killers. They are only a 4 seed this time. They get the at-large bid, a 7-3 record. They will be traveling on the road and facing Mariana. And Mariana, the district champion. And then the 2-7 seed, you have Pensacola Catholic, the district champion. They'll be playing the home game against Walton to get the at-large bid there. And then the 3-6 seed, you have Jacksonville Bowls, which is the district champion. They'll be facing against Taylor County.
No, absolutely. And looking at that, and a round of applause out there to Mariana, 10-0 on the season. And of course, you said Florida High, the Giant Killer there. And yes, they did. They did do a number 2 Mosley, sending Mosley, who was the number 1 seed in 5A Region 1, down to a 3 seed. And we'll talk about that coming up here in the next little bit. But you got Gadsden County sitting there at that number 1 seed, 9-1 overall for the Jaguars. And again, that is a really good grab there for the Gadsden County Jaguars. And going into Class 2A Region 2, Cocoa made the late push. They were sitting at 3 seed just a few weeks ago, but they have jumped to the 1 seed, to the 2A6 champion here, and they're going to host Lake Placid. There was a possibility that we were looking at Bradford in that 1 spot and Bradford going down to Lake Placid, but things have changed here in this situation. And it really is interesting here that we look at this. Cocoa going to host Lake Placid, who won the 2A7 championship by the way, virtue of tiebreaker, because it was a 3-way tie in that district. But Lake Placid comes out on top. Calvary Christian Clearwater, they're going to host Berkeley Prep in this 6-2-5, this 4-5 matchup. Calvary Christian 6-2, Berkeley Prep 5-4. Berkeley Prep, a defending state champion like Cocoa. Cocoa won 2S last year. Berkeley won 2M last year. So this is going to be really interesting when we talk about teams that were in the state championship game last year, because here's another one that was in the state championship game last year in 2S. Last year, Bradford, who was the state runner-up, 8-1 at-large team against the Villages, a 5-4 team that got in. I know, again, a lot of people were expecting Astronaut to be sitting there in that 7 seat and did not get in. And honestly, if this was a straight 1-8, forget the district championships, guess who would have been the 8 seed? 8 seed would have been Astronaut, not Lake Placid. So that's how close it was. And again, some people thought head-to-head does matter in some instances, but head-to-head, it really comes down to your whole entire body of work, not just one game. And we have to keep that in mind here. And the 3-6 matchup, we see Newberry, the 2A5 champion, who beat Bradford for that district championship this year, 8-2, hosting Palaca, another district foe, 7-3. So it'll be a battle of the Panthers there in that 3-6 matchup next Friday night in Newberry. And that is a look there at Class 2A Region 2 and Class 2A Region 3. Chris, take that away, because there's a defending state champion sitting there in that 1 seed.
Yeah, the defending state champion Cardinal Mooney. They will be the district champion there. They'll be facing against Somerset Canyon, the at-large bid, the number 8 seed. Then the 4-5 matchup, Calvary Christian out of Fort Lauderdale. They are the district champion, and they'll be facing against King's Academy, also a district champion, because Calvary Christian has the higher seed. They will be the home team. And then the 2-7 matchup, Bishop Barrow, they are the district champions. They'll be facing against Tarpon Springs, who gets in as an at-large bid at the 7 seed. And then the 3-6 matchup, you have Glade Central. They get in the at-large bid at the 3 seed. They'll be facing against Lakewood.
No, absolutely. And, looking at this, you got to look at it. Cardinal Mooney, get congratulations. Perfect regular season there for the Cougars there. And getting that 9-0 record and get the 1 seed here. I think that's going to be really, really interesting to see how that goes. And actually, Jay Golfin brings up Glade Central versus Lakewood as a rematch of the 2021 second-round playoff. Lakewood won that game, so that'll be really interesting to see how that goes. And Lakewood, hey, improvement there, 5-5. Last year they were sitting there going into the playoffs at 2-8 and finishing the regular season last year. The season total 2-9 here, and I know this is from Emery Smith here because I'm looking at the feed here on the Facebook thing, and he says he felt bad going back to the last bracket. Feel bad for Lake Placid having to travel to Cocoa, and Cocoa's going to kill them. And honestly, he's not wrong there. It's going to probably be a blowout game. But that usually what happens in those 1-8 matchups. Usually, it ends up being a tough out for that 8 seed. Usually, in most instances. But Chris, on the 1A to 2A Region 4, I should say here, Booker T. Washington, they get a big win over Miami Palmetto Thursday night. But honestly, that big win locked them up the number 1 seed, and they're going to be hosting North Miami Beach. We're not sure yet where the game's going to be at. It could be at Curtis, could be at Trask. We're not sure yet. We know how Miami-Dade is. Can take a few minutes to figure out the scheduling process of what stadiums are available down there in Miami-Dade County for their playoff teams. But Booker T. Washington hosting North Miami Beach in that 1-8 matchup. Cardinal Gibbons hosting Miami Carroll City. Miami Carroll City, drastic improvement this year for the Chiefs. They're going to be in that 4-5 matchup with Cardinal Gibbons hosting Miami Carroll City. Cardinal Gibbons 6-4 this year with their tough schedule. Immaculate LaSalle, how about this? They get the 2 seed at large. However, they're going to go on the road to Gulliver Prep, who finished 4-6 but won the 2A 16 district championship. So Immaculate LaSalle going to Gulliver Prep in that 2-7 matchup. And then in the 3-6 matchup, Monsignor Pace is going to host Ransom Everglades. Ransom Everglades has been independent for as long as I can remember over the last decade, but they're back in the FHSAA State Series for the first time, and they make the playoff and get back to the State Series. So Ransom Everglades in the playoffs, and they're headed to Monsignor Pace to play the 2A 14 district champion. And Chris, how about these best games to watch? Why?
Very interesting matchup. Very juicy matchup.
Yeah, very interesting matchup. And one of them you pulled up here. We're gonna talk about that in a moment. But the 7-2 matchup between where Walton is going to be at Pensacola Catholic, but Walton 6-3, Pensacola Catholic 8-1. Honestly, this matchup here, when we're talking about this one, honestly, it can be a tough battle because Walton, they've got a really, really good, strong quarterback who can really throw the yards. But the thing is can they contain Pensacola's Catholic's offense as well? That is going to be the question. And this is going to be a big game here between these two teams here who are district foes. And honestly, again, rematches are hard. And let's see if Walton can't potentially pull off an upset from Pensacola Catholic, who got to the state semifinals last year. But again, Pensacola's Catholic's D-line is going to be the factor here, I think. And as Stephen Thatch points out, that it is the real deal. So can Walton have a game plan against them? That is the big question there. And we'll see what happens there. Now, Berkeley Prep at Calvary Christian. This is going to be a really, really good I think Berkeley Prep and Calvary Christian, Berkeley Prep 5-4, Calvary Christian 6-2. These teams have met already in the regular season. They're district foes as well. Berkeley Prep kind of Calvary Christian kind of shocked everybody, be beating Berkeley Prep, but can Berkeley Prep get the revenge here? That is going to be the key question mark here. I honestly think, Chris, in this situation, Berkeley Prep, if they're prepared for this, they'll come out and they could steal the game here on the Warriors and be on their way to potentially defending their state championship. But this next one here, you pointed this one out because you thought this might have a potential chance of being interesting. And Tarpon Springs, who is at 6-4, Bishop Rose 7-3. What makes this game interesting in your mind compared to the rest of that in Region 3?
You know, I think Tarpon Springs is a sleeping giant down there. They seem to have all the right buttons pushed, and they could be a team that really can sneak up on you, especially with Richard Monroe having some issues defensively early in the season.
No, absolutely, you're right. And Tarpon Springs, Jeremy Freud, he got the team going. They were they were like 9-1 last year, but that was against an independent schedule that they had scheduled to kind of saw some of the gain their confidence back. Tarpon Springs this year, a little bit tougher schedule, 6-4, but hey, it got them in the playoffs. And congratulations to the Spongers there. By the way, I believe this is the 100th season for Tarpon Springs football. So what better way to have you celebrate your 100th season of football, getting a playoff berth. But again, and go up against Bishop Rowe, Carter Smith. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for Tarpon Springs, is defending him, who basically ran all over Glade Central Thursday night to take that district title down there. And begin in the district with Bishop Road, Glade Central, and Clewiston. But the other side of this one, Region 4, Miami Carroll City 7-3 at Cardinal Gibbons 6-4. I honestly, when it comes to Miami-Dade versus Broward matchup, you have to really look at these games because anything can happen in these type games. And Cardinal Gibbons, they've had a tough schedule this year. They've played some tough teams. I mean, Lake Mary. I mean, one of their losses is Lake Mary. I mean, honestly, you know, when you got a loss to Lake Mary, who we're going to talk about later on in Class 7A, I mean, that's a pretty good year. But Miami Carroll City has risen up to a challenge this year, and honestly, you know, there's times where I'm wondering what, you know, Cardinal Gibbons. Honestly, I've had my conversations with head coach Matt DeBuck, and I mean, I'm not going to say everything I know, but I just know that Cardinal Gibbons said, you know, that this is probably not one of his best teams that he's had in a while. So, you know, this has probably been one of the more middle of the road type teams, I could say, when analyzing Cardinal Gibbons. But Carroll City, they come in hot and strong. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs to actually take a win here in this situation, because again, they're peaking at the right time, and that's the big thing there. And Noli, good morning to you. Glad to see you on. I know I missed you Monday night here, but Noli, we're glad to see you on here. Appreciate you joining us here on the Drive the State show. And again, guys, if real quick here, we're going to take a 2-minute water break here in a moment here. But if you're watching us, subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button at Florida HS Football on YouTube. We're also on the other social media platforms at Florida HS Football, X/Twitter. That is at FLA HS Football. And Chris, so far, your thoughts after going through the rural 1A and 2A brackets so far?
There's a lot of interesting matchups, and especially in 2A. You get 2 7-2 matchups that are very interesting to watch. Very rare that you see 2 7 versus 2 matchups in those games to watch bracket.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, because there's going to be a lot to watch here with those get matchups here as we roll along here. But we're going to take a 2-minute water break here. Then we're going to come back, and then we're going to look at Class 3A, Class 4A, and Class 5A before we do 6 and 7A. We'll be right back right after this here on the Drive the State show here on FloridaHSFootball.com and the FloridaHSFootball.com social media networks. right, welcome back here to the Drive the State show here. And Chris, as we said, we're going to get into Class 3A here. All right, Chris, lead us off with Class 3A Region 1 because this looks interesting here as of what we got here with some of these teams here in this region here.
All right, you got the 1-8 matchup, 2 district champions starting off with it. You have Jacksonville Range and Bay. They will be playing against each other. Bay, the 2A1 champion, and Range, they will be hosting that game. So very interesting matchup for a 1-8 matchup. Going down to the 4-5 matchup, Wakula. They are the at-large bid at the number 4 seed. They will be facing Menendez, another at-large bid. And then going down to the 2A matchup, Godby, a 2A District 2 champion. They will be facing against the at-large bid of 20, getting in at the 7 seed. Then going down to the 3 seed, Bishop Kenny, another district champion, they'll be facing against Baker County.
No, absolutely, Chris. And looking at that range, 9-0 here for them. Perfect regular season there for the Range Vikings. A lot of people have got them pegged to potentially make a run to the state title game. They have not done that in almost about 7 to 8 years. Where they have made a run and actually won some state championships. So some people think Reigns can make a potential run here. And then you got Bay again, 5-5 here. But what's really interesting is seeing Swanee. They made it in despite the fact they lost one. They lost their final game to Wakulla. But they make it in because pretty good schedule there. The strength of schedule is what earned Swanee that 7 seed. And it's really, really interesting when we look at these teams here, how they have done it here with the Class 5A Region 1 bracket here. All right, as we take a look at the next set of games here, 5A Region 2, O'Galley, they get that 1 seed at 9-1. They're 3A8 champion. They will host another champion, the District 3A7 champion in Crystal River, 6-3. In the 4-5 matchup, a Brevard County rematch, a Brevard County showdown. These two teams are familiar with each other because they're on the schedule every year. That is Titusville hosting Merritt Island, and the 2 at-large spots there at 4-5. And then Bishop Moore in the 2-7 spot. They are the 3A6 champion. They're going to be hosting Eastside D7 at the 7-3 at-large team in that 7 spot. And you got Dunellen, 3A5 champion at 7-3, hosting Mount Dora 8-2. Mount Dora back in the playoffs for the first time in over a decade. And honestly, when you look at these teams here, it is going to be really interesting. And then South Sumter, a team that's in this region, beat Eastside Thursday night, but it wasn't enough to get them into the playoffs. South Sumter would have been the 8 seed had Crystal River not taken that spot because of them being a district champion. South Sumter finished 8th ranked in that region there, and that South Sumter not in the playoffs despite the fact they got that win over Eastside there on Thursday night. And Chris, going into 3A Region 3, look at that at the 1 seed. How about that?
Yeah, Tampa Jefferson, they get the number 1 seed. They finished the season undefeated. They get the district champion. They'll be facing another district champion in Hudson. Hudson, they finished. They'll be facing. They'll be traveling to Jefferson. So that's a good 1-8 matchup there.
How about Chris? Chris, look at that 3-7 record for Hudson for a moment. And that is like. Isn't that a stunner? All you had to do was win 3 district games. That's it. You got the district championship in the playoffs with winning your 3 district games. Forget everything else.
Oh yeah, that's what counts. That you win your district games, you get in. So that's the benefit of playing district games in this day and age. Going down to the 4-5 matchup, Chamberlain, they are the at-large bid. They'll be facing against Boca Ciega. They are the number 5 seed. Then you have the 2-7 seed. The Booker will be the district champion there. They'll be facing against Hardy. And then the 3-6 matchup, Mulberry, they'll be facing against Nature Colors.
No, absolutely. And Mulberry had been potentially projected as a 1 seed, but they didn't. They ended up dropping down to that 3 seed when it all was said and done. Booker, a state semifinalist last year, but Jefferson last year. Jefferson. What was interesting about Jefferson? They had a losing season. I think they finished like 1-9 last year. So the complete turnaround by the Dragons of Jefferson this year to go a perfect 10-0. I mean, that is huge right there. And Emery Williams-Smith, he chimed in. I kind of figured Jefferson would be bumped to number 2 due to Mulberry playing weak teams this past 2 weeks, but I was a little surprised that Mulberry dropped 2 spots to 3, and he thinks Mulberry playing weak teams in their last 2 games, Lake Region and DeSoto County, which happen to be two of the weakest teams in the state, is what caused them to drop 2 spots besides beating them. But Nolly's like, go Mulberry, so he's looking for Mulberry. And, yeah, we're going to – Ellis. He's asking who's Columbia going to get whitewashed by. You're going to find out in a few minutes here, so we'll talk about that as well. But Emery thinks I think Booker will be a huge favorite over us and will probably kill us. But I hope we give it our all. But yeah, that Booker and Hardy game right there, that 2-7 matchup, that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Chris, 3A Region 4, Miami Northwestern. How about this? The number 1 seed. By the way, the number 1 seed that was projected all season long and the way it was going to be Miami Central until Miami Central had to forfeit those 8 games, and that took Miami Central out of the playoff bracket altogether. And some people thought that Miami Central, even at 0-9, might have had a chance of sliding in, but the forfeitures, the way I don't know how it's calculated. Again, I don't know the formula much as anybody else doesn't know the formula. But Miami Central, there was not even enough there to put them in because of the way they calculated it out. The forfeitures really they hit them hard with the forfeitures for that ineligible player playing in those games. So let's take a look at this here. Miami Northwestern hosting Barron Collier. Miami Northwestern, your 3A 16 champion. First year, by the way, of Teddy Bridgewater being the head coach at Northwestern, and he's got the Bulls right in the thick of it here. Lele was 3A 14 champion. They're going to host Miami Jackson, the 4-6 at-large team in that 4-5 matchup. How about Key West? The Conks are going to be hosting a home playoff game against Estero. Key West was projected potentially to go on the road, but now they are going to be hosting at home at Tommy Roberts in that 2-7 matchup against Estero, who's 6-4. Key West finished the regular season 7-3. And Somerset Academy, Pembroke Pines, who ends up being the 3A 15 district champion that was supposed to have been for Miami Central. Somerset Academy, Pembroke Pines will be hosting Cypress Lake, the 3A 13 champion, in that 3-6 matchup. And what thought could have been a battle between Miami Northwestern and Miami Central in this region, now it looks like it might be all Miami Northwesterns and everybody else leaving being 3 yards in a cloud of dust here, Chris.
Yeah, you look at Key West, they're the biggest benefactor out of this whole situation with Miami Central. So it goes to show that the Miami Central situation really turned the entire bracket upside down.
No, absolutely. And honestly, looking at it with everything here, let's talk about the best games to watch here. Starting with Region 1, I like this 6-3 matchup between Baker County and Bishop Kenny. Ignore Baker County's record. Baker County usually can play some pretty good, strong games. This matchup, I think, is going to be close. I don't think this is going to be one of those games where Bishop Kenny's going to run over them or Baker County's going to run over Bishop Kenny. I don't think so. I think this is going to be a battle, and it's going to be right there. Hey, and there's no better football than William Johnson Stadium there on the grounds of Bishop Kenny High, right there on the banks of the St. Johns River. It is a beautiful scene. If you've never been to a game there, I recommend checking out a game there because I have been there a couple times myself, and it's a beautiful scene. You got the Hart Bridge, and then also right across the way over the water, there is a stadium called Everbank Stadium, home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Right across the way, you can see the stadium in full there. They're on the banks of the St. Johns River at Bishop Kenny near downtown Jacksonville. 3A Region 2, the Tamara Island, Titusville. I really like this game at Elmore Nike Field. Honestly, the Mustangs and the Terriers is a matchup. It can go back and forth between these two teams. It does a lot of times. And honestly, I feel like this is going to be one of those games that at the end of the day, you can take the 4, you can take the 5 team winning this matchup. I think it's going to be close, touchdown or less in this game, because this is the way these two teams play typically. And then 4-5, that 4-5 matchup in Region 3, Boca Ciega, Chamberlain. I think this is actually going to be very, very competitive in terms of these two teams here. But Chamberlain, another team that's in that area, that in Hillsborough County, that has had a turnaround season. And honestly, I like what I have seen here between both Boca Ciega and Chamberlain. I think both teams are really going to put it on and show us, but Chamberlain looks really, really strong. And then Estero at Key West. I like this. All right. I'd like to see how is Estero going to handle a 5 to 6 hour bus ride down to Key West, because remember, you're coming out of the south end of Lee County for Estero. All right. You got at least an hour and a half drive alone across the Alligator Alley. All right. Then you got at least another 4.5 to 5 hours to Key West once you get to Broward County and hit down 75 and hit the turnpike, get into those areas. I really like to see how Estero is going to handle this. If they were smart, I'd take it, break it up, figure out a way. All right, before you hit the bridge to the Keys, pull the team off the side of the road, get a warm up there, and then continue on down the Key West. Well, because honestly, we all know that the situation is that getting to Key West, you hope and pray for a traffic accident not to happen down there on US 1.
Oh, yeah.
For that. And too bad that schools aren't rich enough they could fly into Key West instead of taking the bus, but they can't. I don't think that's going to be possible. But besides that, I think this will be a really good battle between these two teams. I think it'll be very close, and just interesting to see how if the road fatigue plays a factor for Estero being Key West, or if Key West takes advantage of that and moves on to the second round. That'll be the key right there. For sure. All right, Chris, with that said, guess what? We're heading into Class 4A. All right, let's take a look at 4A Region 1. Chris, take a look at that, and that number 1 seed, team that most people are going to be familiar with.
Yeah, the number 1 seed is the district champion. It's St. Augustine. They are 8-1 this year. They'll be facing against Lake City, Columbia. A very interesting first-round matchup, to say the least. Then you have the 4-5 matchup, Pine Forest against Ed White. Pensacola. Ed White's having to travel from Jacksonville to Pensacola. So
no. They're actually close.
It's the other way around. I'm sorry. Yeah, Pine Forest is having to travel to Ed White because Ed White is the district champion. So the 2-7 matchup, you have Waxahachie, Choctaw. They'll be the district champion there. They will be facing against Arnold. A very interesting matchup, and also another very, very interesting matchup in that region. The 3-6 matchup, you have Escambia against Riverside. Escambia, the district champion, they're in District 1.
No, absolutely, yes. When taking a look at that, St. Augustine, their only loss this year, by the way, for St. Augustine was to Nice. And we're going to talk about Nice coming up in Class 6A, but St. Augustine, that is pretty huge there. They were in the 3S title game. Had that game pretty much won until Malin booted that field goal right at the end, and Malin took the state championship last year. So St. Augustine, a state runner-up from last year. But Columbia, what's interesting, Columbia was on the outside looking in for the entire season, in the regular season, at the playoffs. Columbia jumps in and gets enough by beating North Miami Beach and Rickards losing to get in at the 8 seed and get a rematch with St. Augustine, and I like that right there. Arnold in the playoffs for the first time since I can't remember when, because we don't talk about Arnold, so I'll give a big round of applause for Arnold there. What a turnaround season there for the Marlins, 7-3, and they are in the playoffs. But 4A Region 2, this bracket's real interesting because there's Jones, 10-0, perfect regular season 4A7 champion. They will host Lecanto in that 1-8 matchup. And then you got Zephyr Hills and Rockledge in the 4-5 matchup. I really think that'll be an interesting matchup right there as well. Vanguard hosting Leesburg, a district foe, in the 2-7 matchup. Vanguard winning the 4A5 championship. And then Lake Wells hosting New Smyrna Beach, 2 at-large teams in that 3-6 matchup. New Smyrna Beach, John Wilkinson got his Barracudas 8-2 this year. Definitely seen some improvements there out of New Smyrna Beach, but they got to go on the road to play Wake Wells, and that's going to be a tough battle right there. But we'll see what happens there in that bracket. But Jones, right now, a potential heavy favorite to come out of this region in the Class 4A bracket here. And Chris, going into 4A Region 3, this one's fun. This one's going to be fun to talk about because of one particular district here. But I'll follow up behind that after you give us who the matchups are.
All right, number 1 seed, Port Charlotte. They are the district champion. They get they're facing the at-large seed. Number 8 seed, South Fort Myers. South Fort Myers getting in, barely eking it out and getting in as an at-large team. Number 4, Clearwater. They are the district champion. They are also facing another district champion in Tampa Jesuits. So Clearwater will get to host hosting Tampa Jesuits in the first round. The number 2 seed, Naples, and they are the at-large bid. They'll be facing River Ridge, and then the number 3 seed, it's Dunbar. They'll be facing St. Petersburg, and they'll be traveling to St. Petersburg, as St. Petersburg is the district champion there.
No, absolutely. Let's talk about this here again with this 4A District 12. All 4 teams in that district are in the playoff bracket here. Yes, that is Port Charlotte, that is Naples, that is Dunbar, and that is South Fort Myers. All 4 teams from 4A 12 are in. That keeping some other teams in that region out. But again, strength of schedule comes down to the wire, and it really is something here to talk about because that district was strong as all get out this year. And you got a reason I think which is why South Fort Myers got in is because of Port Charlotte, Naples, and Dunbar, what they have done this year. All 3 of those teams ahead of South Fort Myers, 8-2. So that is definitely something really there. And I see here from Emery Williams Smith, because I know that as Emery talking about Port Charlotte has been really impressive this year, and they're wishing them luck this year, and could be a rematch in the regional finals with Naples. Yes, that is definitely a potential possibility there. And Mark Cannon mentioned something here because it was from the last bracket in Region 2, looking to going to Rockledge at Zephyr Hills. That will be a really good game here, I believe. And let's talk about 4A Region 4 here. The 1 seed, American Heritage Plantation, that could have been Miami Norland, but Miami Norland had to forfeit 1 game. That 1 game was to American Heritage Plantation, which cost them the district championship, and that put in American Heritage's hands. And that gave American Heritage the 1 seed in this region, in Region 4. So the 7-2, they're going to be hosting Jensen Beach, 7-3. Jensen Beach slid to the 8 seed, and that's all thanks because they lost to Martin County in the final game of the regular season. So Jensen Beach will be on the road at Plantation American Heritage. John Carroll, how about this? 10-0. They are going to host another district champion, John Carroll, 4A13. They're going to host the 4A14 district champion in Dillard, who finished the season 8-2. So Dillard on the road at John Carroll in the first round. Now, Miami Norland, because of that forfeiture, now they're an at-large team. They're going to be the number 2 seed. However, Hialeah, so most likely going to be at Ted Hendricks on this one. Miami Norland will go to Hialeah to play the 4A16 champion. Hialeah finishing the regular season 8-2. And then in the 3-6 matchup, you have 2 more teams from 4A15. That is Plantation and Archbishop McCarthy. Again, another district that has taken all 4 teams into the playoffs. Plantation hosting Archbishop McCarthy, both teams finishing 6-4 in that 3-6 matchup there. So some districts that were pretty strong and got quite a few teams in, Chris, but other districts, they just get the district champion in and barely anything else.
Yeah, very interesting matchup there. It's interesting to see how American Heritage does down the line once they get past the first couple of rounds.
No, absolutely. And Chris, let's look at this here in the next one. Yes, someone said someone saying FHSAA final ranking on their website had Louisville listed to 9-2, but that's because it's something there. It might have been like an error, but if you go on to the records on Match Press for Dillard, it does show 8-2. So we're going to go with 8-2, not 9-2 on that one. So let's take a look here at the best games to watch here, Chris. This first one, Pine Forest at Ed White. Actually, I believe that should have been 4-5 there. Sorry on my thing, because that number 4 Pine Forest at number 5 Ed White. This could be a really interesting matchup. Could be a really tight ball game. Ed White barely won their district championship over Riverside. So I think, if we're going to look at kind of comparisons, Pine Forest is kind of like a Riverside in a lot of ways. And this could be a really, really tough battle for Ed White to win. And Pine Forest is no team to kind of juggernaut there and try to take a look. So yes, it really, honestly, I say this is going to be one of those matchups where it's just going to be really, really tight. And then we talked about Rockledge, Zephyr Hills. Mark Cannon mentioned about looking at going to that game. Yes, I think this is going to be a game that's worth watching. Rockledge at Zephyr Hills, the 4-5 matchup. Rockledge beating New Smyrna Beach to win their district, but Zephyr Hills, They had some tough games here, and one of their losses for Zephyr Hills this year to Port Charlotte. So Zephyr Hills is going to come in ready, battle-tested. I think Rockledge will be the same way. But one thing that is for note to Rockledge is without their head coach. Right now, he is suspended, actually, due to an investigation by the Brevard County School District. So that was maybe a big reason why they got shut out by Coco, didn't put in the effort. I don't know. But let's see how that impacts them, because my understanding is from what Florida Today is saying, he is not going to be available to coach the playoff game this week. So we will see how that handles for Rockledge. Tampa Jesuit at Clearwater, I think that is going to be a good game. These teams have battled before in the past. I think these two teams are going to give it their all. And yes, Mark Cannon, yes, you're right. I think that's an interesting matchup. Honestly, these two teams, again, have battled each other in playoffs. They have battled each other in regular season before. They even when it comes to potentially spring football, I believe these two teams, when they get on the field, they're going to battle. And Thor Georgiak at Clearwater and Matt Thompson and Jesuit, they know each other pretty well. And I think both teams are going to be ready for battle. And then I think that Dillard John Carroll matchup is going to be really interesting. John Carroll 10-0, but see, I kind of wonder about John Carroll's 10-0 record with the strength of schedule, whereas I think Dillard might be a little bit more battle tested in terms of the South Florida realm of things, because for John Carroll, that region 4 bracket is a lot of South Florida. And if you're gonna get through this bracket, you've got to be prepared. And I don't know if John Carroll necessarily has that 100% compared to the rest of the teams in the bracket that are truly South Florida teams, compared to John Carroll being a Treasure Coast team. Well, then Jensen Beach, a Treasure Coast team. But outside of that, you got a path that is going to be really South Florida. And if John Carroll wins this one, they're the team that's going to be winning on the other side, American Heritage Plantation. So you have to be ready for that. So
yeah, a lot of this matchup up there. I really like that Pine Forest and Ed White game.
No, that absolutely would be a good game there. And let's go ahead and take a look into Class 5A. All right, Chris, we got 5A Region 1. This one actually is a bracket that I think is going to be really interesting. A lot of our people that are watching here this morning have mentioned this particular bracket and some teams in this bracket. And let's talk about it, and then I'll follow up with my commentary on it, because I think this is going to be good.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things to see here. The 1-8 matchup, 2 at-large teams, Middleburg getting into the fold at the 8th seed. They will be traveling to Niceville, a long road trip for the Broncos there. Then the 4-5 seed, you have Ponte Vedra. They will be facing against Beachside in the playoff for the first time in school history as an at-large bid. Number 2, you have Tallahassee Lincoln, district champion. They'll be facing against Mainland. It's weird to see these brackets here with the at-large bids in the upper half and the district champion in the bottom half here. So yeah, in the final, the 3-6 matchup, Mosley they'll be facing against Fleming Island.
No, absolutely. And I meant that I'm sorry about the Fleming Island logo thing. Apparently I thought I changed it, got it saved correctly in there, but it's that's not the right icon there, but for Fleming Island. But let's talk about this here with these brackets here. Let's talk about this because this one's really interesting. Again, you mentioned that the at-large teams, the at-large teams are all in the top half of the bracket. The district champions are all in that bottom half of this particular bracket. And it's really interesting how this worked out. But let's talk about this. Mosley losing to Florida High in the final week of the regular season here, Chris, because that cost them not the number 1 seed, not the number 2 seed, to put them at number 3. That cost them 2 spots right there just because of that. But I also think what helped Niceville in their situation was because South Sutton are beating Eastside. That helped them with their terms of the overall strength of schedule there. But let's talk about this. Ponte Vedra, Beachside, as you mentioned, Beachside in the playoffs for the first time in school history. Brand new school, only a few years old. I think this is only their 3rd year in existence there. Beachside, first 2 years spent as an independent. This year, Beachside in the playoffs at large. They're going to go to Ponte Vedra, as you said, and that's a rematch that Ponte Vedra only won 17-14 earlier this season. So, again, this is going to be a big matchup there, but Lincoln doing really well there. And then Mosley and Fleming Island looking pretty good there as well. But Middleburg, interesting note there, Middleburg, the first time ever in school program history, they have made the playoffs 3 years straight. So that is huge right there. All right. Class 5A Region 2, let's take a look at that. You got a defending state champion, the 4S defending state champion from last year, Lakeland, sitting there with a perfect 9-0 record. How about that? Lakeland 9-0, and Spoto. There was talk about potentially Spoto getting in. Some people didn't think it was going to happen. Spoto got in 6-4. Keeping Lake Gibson out of the playoffs because Lake Gibson had been kind of projected that number 8 seed despite their record, but Spoto gets in. And here's another one, 4-5 matchup, Springstead and Gaylord. They just played Thursday night. They get rematched for the playoffs, so we see some rematches here as we go through this. And that'll be really interesting. Springstead 8-2. They're an at-large team, but they're going to be on the road at Gaylor, who won the 5A State 7 championship. And then you got the Edgewater 2-7 matchup against East Bay. They will host their 5A 5 champion, Tampa Bay Tech and Sebring. 7-2, Tampa Bay Tech hosting 5-5 Sebring in that 3-6 matchup. And honestly, Chris, this bracket could come down to Lakeland and Edgewater for who goes into the state semifinals. This could be really, really interesting.
Oh yeah. That's going to be one of the more interesting brackets I can see for the entire playoff here. So I really like that Springstead Gator game. It's tough to play a team back to back like that and win back to back. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top and how they adjust their game plans for that game.
No, absolutely. By the way, this was a comment I should have popped up on the last bracket, but this is from David Kolzgowski. It says, let's go Mosley, hoping Mainland upsets Lincoln. Selfishly glad that this got delayed till this morning, making salsa and preparing wings for the smoke. I appreciate it. Hey, this is even better than college game day, I think, right now. So absolutely. And Emory Williams says Lakeland is a big favorite to win this region, possibly on their way to another state championship. And yes, that is a potential there. You are right, Emory, but we'll see what happens here. And Reggie Baptist is like, oh, East Bay, and Nolly is like, agreed, go East Bay. But Nolly, you're Lakeland Dreadnoughts, buddy. 9-0. They man, 5. I mean, district champs. They did everything what they needed to do. So hats off to the Lakeland Dreadnoughts here as they do this here. All right. 5A Region 3, Chris, here. And what's interesting here about this region? Well, I can tell you I mean, this region with the 5A Region 3 bracket, there's a lot here.
Oh, yeah. Number 1 seed, you have the number 1 seed, you have Manatee, the district champion. They finished season 7-1. They'll be facing against Pinellas Park, the at-large bid. They get in as an at-large bid. So interesting to see Pinellas Park there. Number 4 and number 5, Immokalee. They'll be facing against Cape Coral, a battle of 2 district champions. Cape Coral having to travel to Immokalee for that matchup there. The 2-7 matchup, Fort White and Charlotte. Fort White's the district champion. They'll be facing against the Charlotte Trojans. So very interesting to see Fort White there at the 2 seed. Josh will probably allude to this very shortly. So then the 3 seed, Riverdale and North Fort Myers, they're the 2 at-large bids.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and looking at this, it's interesting that there's some rematches here on this slate here. You got Manatee, Pinellas Park district rematch here. Fort Myers, Charlotte, a regular season rematch. Fort Riverdale, North Fort Myers, again another rematch from the district here. And really interesting that these teams here, the way they have finished, Fort Myers won the tiebreaker in 5A11. That was a district tiebreaker right there between Fort Myers, Riverdale, and North Fort Myers for that district there. And Cape Coral, Tyler Murphy. Talk about him, the former Florida and Boston College quarterback, first year as head coach at Cape Coral, 8-1 on the season. Mockley 9-1. We haven't seen Mockley this great since they won the state championship in 2012 against Scobie that year. Yes. Nole mentions he's a dreadnought for life. However, remember what East Bay used to look like. I'm proud of them. And then Big Shot Cards and More is saying strength of schedule holds too much value. Obviously, if there's a head-to-head comparison, it should count for more than the strength of schedule. But how do you factor that into a formula? I mean, Chris, what do you think? I mean, do you think head-to-head should hold something here, but do you think the strength of schedule, based upon the way teams are now and the way there's a situation here, especially the fact that Florida has open enrollment and the way teams are scheduling, especially with terms of national games?
Head-to-head should be factored in pretty good. But I think you can win one game, and it could be a fluke one week, and you could be a good team with a tough schedule, and you have that one off week, and the head-to-head matters more. That's going to be a tough sell for a lot of teams in the bracket.
No, absolutely. And of course, Nole said, and good to see the Hurricanes storming through. He's talking about the Manatee Hurricanes and Jaquez Green. Yes, the Gator great Jaquez Green that got Manatee really rolling there. And looking at this, here we go. 5A Region 4. Let's look at this bracket here. How about this? Atlantic, yes, Atlantic, Delray Beach Atlantic, the number 1 seed at 9-1, the 5A 14 champion. They will be hosting Mater Academy. At-large team 6-4. Mater Academy gets in. Miramar, and you got 2 district champs host in that 4-5 matchup. Miramar are going to be hosting Heritage out of Palm Bay. Miramar finishing 6-4. Heritage, Palm Bay 5-5. Now this is interesting, Chris, because we talked about this before. You have to go back over a decade to find the last time that St. Thomas Aquinas finished the regular season with 3 losses. St. Thomas Aquinas 7-3, and they get the number 2 seed, 5A District 15 champion, and they will host North Miami in the at-large at 6-4. And you got Blanche, Ely, and Coconut Creek in the 3-6 matchup.
Yeah, a lot of interesting matchups. I really like that Miramar matchup there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots end up doing against Menendez.
No, absolutely. And that's what I'm interested to see is how Miramar and Heritage plays out here. And Nole's like, someone please upset the Raiders. He's talking about St. Thomas Aquinas. He wants someone to upset St. Thomas Aquinas. So we'll have to see what happens there. But let's take a look at some of these matchups here. The best games to watch, in my opinion, here. Beachside at Ponte Vedra in that 4-5 matchup in Region 1. I think that's going to be really good. Again, Ponte Vedra won this one 17-14. I think at the end of the day, this could be another down-to-the-wire game. Let's see what happens. But Brian Case for Ponte Vedra, how about this? He had the hat trick for high school football or a football period. He not only had 3 rushing touchdowns last week. He had a receiving touchdown and a passing touchdown. So talk about the ultimate hat trick that you do not see. So that Beachside Ponte Vedra game, I think, will be really, really good. Springstead at Gaither, that 4-5 matchup. Again, someone mentioned this here about this, and it said EMAS said Gaither is sneaky better than the record due to forfeits. Yes, because Gaither has 2 forfeits. Gaither could be actually 8-2 right now, and maybe a higher seed, but 2 forfeits cost them. And but this matchup, this rematch with Springstead, it'll be really interesting to see if Springstead comes up with anything looking at the film from Thursday night to getting ready for the playoffs this coming Friday. But Springstead on the road at Gaylord. Cape Coral and Immokalee, that is going to be a really good matchup. Two teams that have really come up here this year, really have rebuilt things up. And I'm really, interested to see how the coaching between Tyler Murphy does against the coaching from James Delgado at Immokalee. I think both teams, that is going to be a really good game, especially if for those in Southwest Florida, you will keep an eye on that one. And then Coconut Creek at Blanche Ely. I know Coconut Creek's 4-5 record. You can throw that record out the door. They have been they have played a tough schedule this year. Blanche Ely's one of their biggest wins this year so far, getting that win over Chaminade Madonna in week 2. So that has definitely helped boost Blanche Ely this year. But honestly, this game could go either way, and don't be surprised if Coconut Creek decides to, hey, this week we're gonna shock the state a little bit and pull off the upset. So that 4-5, 7-3 matchup, definitely something there. All right. Let's talk about this here. Let's do this. We got Class 6A and 7A left, and then we're going to have Bob Putnam on, I believe. We're going to have Bob Putnam on around 11 o'clock here, or just slightly after, and then we're going to have the GOAT, Larry Bluestein, coming on with us here, Chris. You're familiar, you know Blue himself pretty well, like I do, and it'll be good to talk to all the playoff stuff with Larry Bluestein coming up here in a moment. But we're going to take a 2-minute water break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into 6A, 7A, take a look at those brackets here, and go from there. And we'll be right back right after this here on the Drive the State Show here on FortHSFootball.com. All right, welcome back here to the Drive the State Show here, looking at the bracket analysis here of all the classifications, and then are talking with our guest analysis as we do this here. But here on FortHSFootball.com, Joshua Wilson here along with Christopher Lyke, and we have gone through rural 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and 5A. We have 2 more classifications left. So we've done 6. We've got 2 more left here, but we're going to talk, bring up a comment here that I saw here, and this is from Guanton Elliott out of there. He said, did Baker County make it in the playoffs? Yes, they did. They are in the number 6 seed. They will be at Bishop Kinney here this coming week. So you kind of missed 3A a little bit earlier, but when the replay, you can go back and watch that later on here once we're done with the live show here. And Bart Cannon's like, someone please get me – he needs some coffee. And Nolly's like, here you go, Mark. All right. There you go. There you go. I love it. I love it. I love what y'all are doing here. But All right. With that said here, how about this? Let's roll into Class 6A. All right, Chris, Class 6A Region 1. This one's going to be another fun bracket because I know there's a lot of people here that have focusing on this particular region too because they of the matchups that are here.
Yeah, the 6A Region 1 bracket starts off with the number 1 seed in the East. They are 9-0, a district champion out of 6A Region 3. 6A District 3, rather. They'll be facing against Tate. Tate traveling to Nice. So that's a very interesting road trip for Tate going to Nice. Mandarin, they are the district champion in 6A2. They'll be facing against Oakleaf. The Oakleaf, the at-large bid, 7-3. And then number 2, Buell. They are the at-large bid. They'll be hosting Orlando Evans at 6-4. And then the 3-6 matchup, Pace 9-1. They'll be facing against another district champion, Oviedo, at 8-2 in the 3-6 matchup.
No, absolutely. And someone said like Pace got screwed again this year, and I don't know if Pace got screwed. They guaranteed themselves a playoff berth. When we're talking about when getting screwed last year, they didn't make the playoffs last year at all because even though the fact that they were 8-2, it was because of some situations in the region that were district champs that were ranked lower than them jumped up ahead of them and bumped them out. Honestly, Pace is getting a home game. Honestly, it's the Pace's advantage in this situation. Oviedo's got to travel at least 7 hours from the Orlando area to the Panhandle, and that's going to be a long road trip. And the Oviedo fans were not too happy about this because the thought was that Pace was going to be the 2 seed and Buchholz was going to be the 3, and Buchholz was going to be on the road to Oviedo, and Pace was going to host like Evans. But Buchholz getting a home game here. Instead, I think that was the most shocking part of this bracket here was seeing that Buchholz was going to be the 2 seed over Pace. But really, that 4-5 matchup, we got a rematch there of the District 6A2 championship from a couple weeks ago. So that'll be really interesting to watch to see how that unfolds there with that game there in that Region 1 bracket. But Nice 9-0 on the regular season. And then going into Region 2, how about this? We got to give some round of applause here. Hold on 1 second. Let me get that situated here on the board. There we go. How about that? Not only one for Nice, but we'll give another one for Armwood here in a moment here. How about this? Armwood. How about this? Armwood 10-0 on the season, 6A8 champion. And they're going to be in the 1 seed hosting the number 8 seed Melbourne at 5-5. Armwood and Melbourne in that 1-8 seed. 4-5 2 at-large teams. You got Plant sitting there 7-3 at number 4. Bartow 6-4 at number 5. So Plant hosting Bartow in that 4-5 matchup. How about Osceola 8-2? They are going to host Vieira, who've actually finished the season 4-6, but they get the at-large bid. And Vieira will be going with to a rematch in their district with Osceola Kissimmee there. And then Durant 7-3, they're the 6A7 champion, will be hosting the 6A6 champion. That's not, it's supposed to say 6A6, not 6A5, but they are Southlake is the 6A6 champion at 7-3. And so Durant hosting Southlake, and Southlake, what a turnaround season there for the Eagles under the second-year head coach of Brad Lord, getting them a district championship first time in nearly 20 years. So huge accomplishment there. But Armwood potential, basically Armwood and then Osceola, probably the 2 favorites to probably potentially emerge out of this particular bracket. And Noah's like, go Yellow Jackets. He's talking about this Bartow Yellow Jackets. He wants to see them upset Plant. So we'll see what happens there in that one. And I see this from Gary Larson. It says, let's go Osceola Cowboys. And there you go. All right, Chris, 6A Region 3. This is should be interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. You got the number 1 seed, West Boca. They're finishing the season 10-0. They're the 6A12 champion. They'll be facing another district champion. It's Steinbrenner. Steinbrenner having to travel to West Boca across the state to play in West Boca Raton. So that's the 1-8 seed for that matchup. The 4 or 5 seed Mitchell, 10-0. They finished their season undefeated at only a 4 seed with the schedule coming into play. They are the District 9 champion out of that district. They'll be facing against Paris, the 9-1 at-large bid. And the 2-7 seed, 9-1 district champions, Palmetto. They'll be facing Largo at the at-large bid at 6-4. The Largo Packers, they got in there somehow. Then Wiregrass Ranch, they're the number 3 seed at 9-1. They're the at-large bid. Again, they'll be hosting against Royal Palm Beach, who finished the season at 7-3.
No, absolutely. And when we talk about this, West Boca Raton had a loss on the season, but that got reversed in a forfeiture because of Western forfeiting 2 games, and West Boca Raton was a benefactor of that and putting West Boca Raton at undefeated status to finishing the regular season 10-0 and Mitchell 10-0. So round of applause there for both of those teams there. And but some people are saying, why did Wiregrass Ranch get ahead of Mitchell? And honestly, some people are saying the head-to-head factor, but the strength of schedule part of it, Wiregrass Ranch had just a little bit slightly stronger strength of schedule, and that got them ahead of the Mitchell, and that's between 3 and 4. But Royal Palm Beach, what a turnaround there for Chuck Kenyon's team at 7-3, get into the playoffs. They were on the outside looking in just a few weeks ago, but they are in, and then with that said, I mean, it really is interesting there in terms of those teams here. Let's keep a roll here going into 6A Region 4 here, Chris. Let's talk about this. Miami Southridge taking the 1 seed at 8-2. South Broward sitting there 4-6. They are 6A 14 champions. Southridge 6A 16 champion. Then you got Monarch and Homestead in the 4-5 matchup. Monarch a 6A 13 champion. And then Piper 9-1 at large. What a good season there for the Piper Bengals, hosting Doral Academy. Both teams at large there. And then West Broward, they're actually district champion. I did not get that fixed apparently. And then they are the 6A 15 champion. They will be hosting Flanagan 7-3. Both teams 7-3. West Broward hosting Flanagan. That game, that's a determination where it's going to be at, because West Broward usually either plays at Flanagan. They don't actually have a home stadium, by the way. So
yeah, so the speculation that they could play in Miramar, but which was probably the closest neutral site for them. So yeah, it's very interesting to see where West Broward ends up playing.
No, absolutely. And games to watch here in this in the 6A bracket: Oakleaf at Mandarin 7-3. Mandarin 7-3. This is a rematch. It's a district rematch. This one I think is going to be battle. I think Oakleaf will have learned a lot of lessons, and they will keep this game close with Mandarin. They may not win it, but this will be a much closer game than it was last time. South Lake at Durant. This is going to be a good one, because I think these teams are in terms of evenly matched in a way. If you look at these teams, South Lake is up and coming with Brad Lord as the head coach. Durant, Claybo Varnum. They've been really good this year, but they've had to play a few tough games, and that's where the bosses have come in for Durant. But I think in terms of looking at these two teams I feel like are more evenly matched in what the seedings are going to tell. Largo at Palmetto, I'm interested because some people say, I'm wondering about Palmetto and their strength of schedule a little bit, but Largo, I kind of question, can Palmetto kind of get past Largo? Considering that Largo lost 7-6 to Steinbrenner, Largo could have been a district champ if they had not been lost to Steinbrenner 7-6. So that could have, I like to see if Largo, like, okay, well, you know what? All right, we got to go take some revenge on somebody. Is the revenge going to be on Palmetto here in this situation? And Flanagan, West Broward, that 3-6 matchup, I really like that matchup. 2 teams right there in Pembroke Pines that are going to really go at it each other. It's a bit of a rivalry game in that situation there, but I really like that one. And Mark Cannon says Wiregrass Ranch has 4 players in the top 200 in Florida. It was their own worst enemy against Mitchell the other night. See, that is the problem right there. You're right. When you have everything there, that you have the recipe, sometimes getting too overconfident can end up coming back to bite you, Chris. And that seems to what happened there for Wiregrass Ranch against Mitchell. All right, we got one more classification to go, and then we're going to have Bob Putnam on from Primetime Preps to talk about the Tampa Bay region, which is pretty huge, over 100 schools in that region alone in terms of the teams in that area. And there's quite a few teams in Tampa Bay that have made the playoff brackets, and we're going to talk to him in a moment here. But first, let's get into Class 7A here and look at the final classification of brackets here for the FHSAA playoffs. All right, Chris, let's take a look at this 7A Region 1 bracket because this is going to be interesting. This is there's a lot of nuggets in this particular bracket here in Region 1 because of how it played out and how it panned out.
Oh yeah, very interesting and very eye-popping to say the least. Number 8, DeLand, they get in at the 5-5 at large bid. They'll be traveling to Lake Mary, who are the 7-8-3 district champion. They finished 8-2 from DeLand, so will be hosting DeLand in the first round. Flagler Palm Coast, the at-large bid at 9-1, 8-1, I think. Yeah, 9-1. Flagler Palm Coast. They'll be hosting Spruce Creek, another at-large bid in the 4-5 matchup. And then the Stanford Seminole, they're the number 2 seed. They finished the season 8-1. They are the at-large bid at the 2 seed. They'll be traveling to Creekside at 5-5. Creekside hosting their first ever playoff game at home, and they're the 7A1 champions for Creekside. Then in the 3-6 matchup, University Orange City, they're the 7A2 champion. They'll be hosting against Winter Park, the 7A4 champion.
No, absolutely. And what happened in this bracket was real interesting because Spruce Creek beat University Thursday night. It put it in a 3-way tie status, but University comes out on top in terms of the tiebreakers. But Spruce Creek gets that rematch against Flagler Palm Coast, who Flagler Palm Coast beat this season already. And one of Flagler Palm Coast's big wins this year against the defending state champion Mainland. One of their big wins this year. That was only like a 7-2 score, by the way. So that real interesting. Sanford Seminole. This is going to be some interesting to see happen. And DeLand, DeLand got in despite the fact that Flagler Palm Coast beat them Thursday night, and DeLand getting in at 5-5. That was kind of a stunner there, considering I thought there was a chance that they could have been left out, but they were that close between DeLand and Boone in terms of who got the number 8 seed. There as we look at that. Let's go into 7A. Oops, going a little too far ahead. 7A Region 2, where we'll talk about some of these teams here with Bob Putnam here coming up here in just a few minutes. You got Haines City going to Venice. Venice taking the number 1 seed, 7A8 champion. Haines City 7A6 champion at 6-4. Newsom and Sumner, both 7-3, getting at-large teams right there. How about that? Both at-large teams, Newsom and Sumner. Sumner kind of, it was on the outside looking in when the first rankings came out, but Sumner pushed up, worked hard, worked their tails off, got the 7-3, and they got into the playoffs there. Plant City, the team that's in the same district with Newsom and Sumner, finished 8-2, the 7A7 champion. Plant City, what a year for them. And they are going to host Sarasota Riverview in that 2-7 matchup. And then West Orange finishing 8-2 at 7 in the 7A5 champion. They're going to host Apopka in that 3-6 matchup. The Apopka finishing the regular season 4-5. The first time Apopka has had a losing record in the regular season since going back to, I think, 1998. That's how long it's been. And Apopka could finish with their first losing season in school history here, depending on how the game result in West Orange here comes out on next week. But West Orange the favorite, because West Orange beat them pretty soundly here in the regular season. But Apopka, it's odd seeing Apopka in the playoff bracket at a losing record. That I can tell you. That is one of the strange things about this particular bracket here, Chris.
Yeah, it's very strange to see Apopka with a losing record there, and at least they got in. So that's going to be interesting to see how they fare against West Orange.
No, absolutely. All right, 7A Region 3. Let's talk about this, Chris. Lead it off here.
Okay, number 1 seed, starting off at number 1, 9-1, Palm Beach Central, 7A12 champion. They'll be hosting Fort Pierce Central, who gets in at 5-5 in the at-large bid. In the 4-5 matchup, there will be the District 11 champion will be facing the District 10 champion, Lake Nona. And then the 2-7 matchup, Dr. Phillip finishing the season 9-1. They are the District 9 champion. They'll be hosting Toho. And then the 3 matchup, the 3-6 matchup, Jupiter 9-1 at the at-large bid. They'll be facing the at-large bid 3-6 Treasure Coast.
No, and don't write off that Treasure Coast record at 3-6. What a schedule they had this year. Do not write them off. Do not write Treasure Coast off. I will tell you why in just a moment here. Columbus, Region 4, the last bracket we got to go through here. Columbus, the number 1 seed at 6-3, they're the 7A 16 champion. They're going to host Spanish River, who is the 7-3 at large team in the 1-8 matchup. In the 4-5 matchup, you got Santa Lucia's 8-2, the 7A 13 matchup against South Dade, finishing 5-5, getting the at large spot. The 2-7 matchup, Miami Palmetto 6-4 at large against Western 4-6 at large. Western could have been a district champion there in 7A 15, but had to forfeit 2 games that cost them the district championship and sent Western down on the rankings. They thought they might have been they were going to be paired up with the number 8 spot against Columbus in the first round, but they got lucky this time around. They're facing a team they knocked out of the playoffs last year in the first round. So a rematch from last year's regional quarterfinals between Miami Palmetto and Western in the 2-7 matchup. And in 3-6, you got Boca Raton 9-1, the 7A 14 champion against Goldman 6-4, the 7A 15 champion in that Region 4 bracket. Let's talk about this. Games to watch. Spruce Creek, Flagler, Palm Coast. That game was a dandy in the regular season. It affected the District 7A2 standings. Expect battle here again. That'll be at San Campanella Memorial Stadium in Palm Coast. That'll be a huge game right there to watch. Keep an eye on it. See what happens because Spruce Creek wants their revenge against the Bulldogs. Sumner Newsom, another big game, another rematch from the regular season in district play. This game can come down to the wire again. I expect Sumner to fight. I expect Newsom to fight. It's going to be really interesting to see who comes out as the victors on this one. I told you about Treasure Coast. Throw the 3-6 record out. This matchup is going to be evenly matched because Jupiter's strength of schedule probably not as the best. I think this is going to give Jupiter everything and more than what they could have asked for. And Treasure Coast is going to bring the house. They're going to bring the heat. And don't be surprised if Treasure Coast comes out of this one as the victor because of, again, the strength of schedule has helped them prepare for this moment here, and that's why they're in the playoffs. And in Western, Miami Palmetto already alluded to it. What happened, last year, Western knocked Miami Palmetto out in the first round. Potential chance that could happen here. Western could have been instead of 4-6, they could be 6-4 right now. But Western kind of started off slow this year, but got it picked up steam here. But let's see what happens. See if the Wildcats take everything that they have had to deal with over the last couple of weeks, especially those 2 forfeits, and see if they basically lash out on the Panthers this coming week. And we're not sure where that game is going to be at yet. It could most likely be at Tropical Park, but again, we don't know exactly because, again, Miami-Dade County scheduling, we know how it all works there. And with that said, Chris, Bob Putnam in here in just a moment here to talk about they're in the Tampa Bay area. And then coming up after that, we're going to have the GOAT Larry Bluestein coming on and join us. So get ready. We're going to do some analysis here with Bob Putnam in our interview here in just a second here. All right. All right. Perhaps here, the leading high school sports website for all of Tampa Bay. And Bob, appreciate you taking some time out of your weekend here. First, give us give me your first thoughts when you looked at these brackets. What stood out to you, and what was like the wow moment for you? Like what kind of surprised you?
Not a ton of surprises because I kind of figured who was going to make it and who wasn't. One of the interesting matchups that is going to go on this Friday is Clearwater and Jesuit playing each other. Don Misick was the former Clearwater coach, who's now the offensive coordinator at Jesuit. So he comes back, faces his old team. They played it a couple of years ago, and it was a great game. Came down to like a goal line stand that Clearwater was able to hold on for the win. So I think that could be a really interesting matchup that not a lot of people are talking about.
No, absolutely, Bob. And, when we're looking at this, let's talk about this, especially the 7A Region 2 bracket where, at one point Sumner was on the outside looking in, but they pushed ahead, got into that matchup. Newsom, what a year they had. They've rebuilt basically. And they've got a first-year head coach there, and they've come back storming to life. And then Plant City, what a year they've had. So I mean, that for those teams in year 7A right there, just alone right there, I mean, they have done really well, and I think they've surprised a lot of people in some ways because of the improvements they have made this year.
Yeah, so like the Newsom-Sumner matchup, it's two first-year coaches. Sumner, George Selby, former USF standout, took over there. They lost a lot of guys that transferred out during the transition phase, waiting to see who was the new coach. But they've been able to do really well. Picked up a win against Plant. Plant was without their quarterback at the time, but it still was a big win. And the first time that these guys played each other, it was a very close game. Tightly contested. And then Plant City, they've just got a really explosive offense. Quarterback Chris Denson, and then you got Tony Marshall at running back. And I mean, they put up like 40 points a game or more, like in the last, the last probably 2 months or so. Really explosive there, and done a really good job as far as putting points on the board.
No, absolutely. And Chris, you got anything you want to ask Bob here?
Yeah, you look at the Charlotte and Fort Myers matchup. What do you see with those two teams? I know Charlotte, they're coming in at the 7th seed. What, especially with that district there, give us your impression of that area, that particular region.
I don't really cover as much as far as down to that area, but I'm sure it'll be a pretty good matchup as far as Charlotte, Fort Myers. I know they always field really solid teams down there, and I've got a feeling it's going to be a pretty great game.
No, absolutely. And, looking at a couple of the other classes, especially 6A Region 2, talk about Armwood, 10-0 this year. I mean, they just literally, some people thought, there's a chance that, they could be in the state championship talk, and they've actually really cemented that talk there this year with the perfect regular season. And 6A is kind of one of those classifications that, it's kind of wide open, was kind of wide open coming into the season, because it wasn't really a defending state champion sitting there in that classification. So, and the only team that, that was really in terms of the mix of played in the state championship last year was Mandarin. So, I mean, for Armwood to do what they have done this year, what is it about the Hawks and what people really need to kind of keep an eye out here as they go through the postseason?
Well, they've obviously right from the beginning, they beat Norland in the preseason. So that, I think, opened some eyes for some people. And then, they got a big win against Tampa Bay Tech. They're very loaded too. Kind of avenged a loss from the playoffs last year, against Tech. And in the last probably month and a half, they've just been rolling, just been crushing people. The offense is really balanced. A lot of the talk is with the running back, Gerard Pringle, a Miami commit. But the quarterback, Rise Brush, he had 30 touchdown passes and just one pick heading into the regular season finale. So he's a really good quarterback, and they've got some, explosiveness, out at the with receivers. Tyler Williams, he's a Georgia commit, and Alante Dean. So they've got weapons all around, and the defense has obviously played really well, especially in this second half of the season.
No, absolutely. And got to go into 6A Region 3 because this one was really interesting because of the game of the year, basically, between Mitchell and Wiregrass Ranch, that Mitchell basically totally dominated Wiregrass Ranch, and Wiregrass Ranch still getting a higher seed than Mitchell. I mean, there's people there in Pasco County that are like, what in the heck happened here?
Yeah, so I'm not offering this as a defense. I'm just offering this as an explanation, as to what happened. But I think that when you're looking at the formula that they're using, at least this year, the strength of schedule weighs heavily into it. particularly the one loss records of your opponents. So when you look at Wiregrass Ranch, the one loss record of their opponents was 56-44. The one loss record of Mitchell's opponents was 36-63. So I think that is probably why, that happened, regardless of the head-to-head. Again, like I said, I'm not offering it as a defense. I'm just offering it as an explanation, no stake in it, but yeah, it's obviously two really good teams in that region. Mitchell has they're kind of led by the quarterback Caden Thomas and the running back Corey Sims. They're both juniors and both pretty dynamic players. So the offense kind of runs through those two. And Wiregrass, obviously, they've got some star power with some guys that have college commits, and they can do some damage as well.
No, absolutely.
One of the matchups in 5A we alluded to earlier was Springstead and Gaither. Very interesting matchup in the first round. What are your impressions with Gaither, and what do they bring to the table in that matchup with Springstead?
So Gaither had to forfeit a few games at the beginning, so otherwise they probably would have been a much higher seed than they actually were. The running back, Mason, he had battled through some injuries. He's kind of healthy now. The quarterback, EJ, he's come on, kind of a dual threat guy. And then defensively is where they're pretty strong. They return quite a bit. Plus they, with Antonio Hensley, defensive lineman, and now he can't be really doubled because, in the offseason they picked up Jesse Harold, an LSU commit who came over from Robinson on the edge. And, those two can really create can really wreak some havoc in backfields. Springstead is a really solid team. They're kind of led by their running back, Connor McCasio. He's 1,000-yard rusher, plays a lot on defense too. Their quarterback's not bad either. Don't underestimate him. Gio Martinez, he's pretty good as well.
No, absolutely. And let's talk about this with 3A Region 3. Let's go down there because that bracket pretty heavily Tampa Bay in terms of the teams that are in there. Jefferson, how about that? 10-0. What a turnaround year they've had. Chamberlain, 7-3. Another team that has had a turnaround. Teams that struggled last year. Here they are combining between those two teams, Jefferson and Chamberlain, for 17 wins this year. Talk about two drastic improvements between these two teams.
Yeah, Jefferson was really able to take advantage of their schedule and really roll. I think the key with them is they didn't have a lot, for the past couple of years, they've just really struggled as far as guys transferring out to other programs. They were able to keep guys this year, keep kind of a core. Plus they added a quarterback, Jack Cunningham, who transferred in. And they're the offensive line kind of stayed together. They're really big, really strong up front. And, they've got all kinds of weapons. Cunningham, Knowledge Jones at receiver, and Ronell DuBose at running back. You've got I think close to a 2,000-yard rusher, a 3,000-yard passer. They've put up 40 to 50 points a game, just about every game that they've been in. The key is, now that you're gone into the playoffs, they haven't been tested all that much. They're probably their toughest game was this last one, which was a really impressive win against Chamberlain. But, how do they sustain that, as going through the playoffs in that one seed? Chamberlain is a great story. They had some kind of some upheaval as far as the coaching staff, at the beginning of the year. James Wilder stepped down and, Chad Wood took over. But, they brought in quite a few players this offseason. And that's kind of, made a difference, in terms of what they've been able to do. Really good defensively, and, they've been able to do enough on offense to make things happen.
No, absolutely. And real quick, let's make a this. Hudson, they get in as a district champ at 3-7. All they had to do was win the 3 district games they needed to, and that was it. And that's what they did and got in. I mean, do you feel like, and your Bob, let me get your opinion here on this one. Do you feel like this is a reason why maybe we shouldn't have districts because of things like this, where, hey, you're kind of slotting in the back door like Hudson did? Because honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't make for a compelling matchup against Jefferson, because it makes it look like Jefferson's going to run over them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be like as lopsided as people think. Hudson has played well in some games, that they won the game that mattered. They won the game against Nature Coast. Kind of, I think, really surprised Nature Coast in that game. They can play. They can give people games. But yeah, I mean, it is tough. When you see like a 3-7 record. But they did what needed to be done to make it in there.
No, absolutely. And of course, not to forget like the 1A schools that are really, because you got Calvary Christian now, and they're in the 2A Berkeley Prep. They're going to be rematching. That'll be an interesting one. And then of course you got like teams like Carrollwood Day, who won their district, Clearwater Central Catholic, the benefactors of the forfeits from First Academy, getting to the 1 seed. And real quick, Bob, I mean, do you think of all the teams, who do you think the teams in your region, just off the top of your head, who would be the best teams to potential chance to get the state championship game?
You mean as far as 1A, or just all around?
As far as all around, any of the teams in your region that might have the best chances?
Well, I think the 2 most obvious, would be Armwood and 6A, just, based on, who's in the classification and what they've been able to do. And obviously CCC, benefiting, obviously from First Academy and what's happened there, and, just getting a chance to, play Chaminade again. They really beefed up their schedule this year. CCC, they played Venice, and that was a really good game. They were stopped at like the 4-yard line in the closing seconds for a potential game-tying touchdown, against Venice. They played the St. Francis from Maryland. They didn't quite go their way in that game, but at least they'd face the competition that they need. And I think that game against Venice gives them some confidence going into a potential matchup with Chaminade this time. That they can play with good teams and compete. After that, Tech's in a really tough region, with Lakeland. So, but they are very loaded. They've got, receiver wise, defensive secondary wise, they're, have as much depth and talent as, anyone in the state. So they could do, some damage there. Those would probably be the ones that I would say, have the best shot of, doing something. I wouldn't count out Carrollwood Day, though, in a matchup with CCC either. That was a really tough district that they won, beating Lakeland Christian, beating Victory Christian. They played some really tough teams as well. They've got a big offensive line. Jordan Magwood is a really electric quarterback as well. And those games have been really, really close. So if that game, goes down to a region final again matchup, I would expect another pretty tight game, between Carrollwood and CCC.
I alluded this to with Mike laid out earlier. The 3A, the class split and the metro suburban split. How has it impacted your region as far as 1 year to the next?
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
The class 3, the classification setup and the metro suburban setup. How has that impacted your region from 1 year to the next?
I don't know if it's affected it a ton. I mean, 3A, we've got obviously Berkeley that's in there. It was a really tough schedule that they had this year. And I think they, missed a couple of guys defensively. That's going to be a great matchup as far as when they play Calvary. They've met a couple of times in the postseason this past couple of years. Calvary under that first-year coach Wes Stafford, he's done a great job. They had a lot of guys transfer out before he came, so he's able to kind of shore things up there as well. But yeah, as far as, I don't think there's been a ton of change or effect with that as far as what's been able to move, up and down and stuff.
No, absolutely. Well, Bob, I appreciate you taking your time out of your weekend here to join us here on the Drive to State. Thank you for being flexible with us, given everything last night with the internet issues I was having.
Yeah, no problem.
But no, appreciate you having you on. We'll talk to you as we go deeper into playoffs here, and we'll go. You can go to primetimepreps.com and see what all the stuff that Bob has on the Tampa Bay region. Appreciate it, Bob.
All right, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was Bob Putnam there from Primetime Preps joining us here on the Drive the State show. And then I know the GOAT, Larry Bluestein, he is on. I know his camera's not on right this second, but I know he's there. He's on. And then once we get Blue's camera on, we're going to take a 2-minute water break, and then we're going to have him on here. So appreciate everybody that's been joining us here this morning here. Playoffs for breakfast, as they would say, Chris.
Yep.
So absolutely. We're going to take a 2-minute water break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have Larry Bluestein on from Prep Red Zone, Florida, and LarryBluestein.com. We'll be right back right after this here on the Drive the State Show, bracket analysis show here on FortHSFootball.com and the FortHSFootball.com social media networks. All right, welcome back here to the Drive the State show. Coming up here in just a moment, the GOAT, the Larry Bluestein, will be joining us here. All right. The man of the hour, Larry Bluestein, joining us here on the Drive the State bracket analysis show here in blue. I mean, it's I think the most fun part of the year. It's when we see everybody go at it and see who is going to take home some hardware come next month. And Blue, to kind of look at everything. I know you've been a busy man this morning, so thank you for being flexible here. But, let's talk about this with the brackets here. I mean, honestly, we've had some things come out over the last week here, actually the last, 96, 70, 96, 100, how many hours? I can't even keep count anymore. Between Miami Central forfeiting games, First Academy forfeiting games. I mean, it just really kind of shook up the playoff race right at the end. What do you make of it with what the FHSAA put out last night?
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me on, Chris. Good to see you again. Long time no see. And Josh, it kind of did stir up things, obviously, in the South Florida area with everything that has gone on. Miami Central being probably the worst of having to forfeit all their games, and kind of really feel bad for the kids. They had nothing to do with it, and they had an opportunity. They had the talent, and they had the opportunity to win it all this year, and it hit them hard, and certainly. Having to give way. They were going to play Northwestern again anyway, but that hurt. The New Orleans game was kind of something that probably hurt the most because when they played Cocoa, they had a kid kicked out, and then he started the next week against American Heritage, a district game, a key district game. They won the game, and then they had to forfeit that game, which was huge because it put American Heritage in a situation where they've got the home field throughout now. I mean, they're the number one seed in the state at 4A. So that was kind of costly. And then I think the Western losses are kind of throwing people for a loop because I've watched them the last 5 weeks. They're as good as anybody. They'll match up with anybody right now. They've got talent up and down. I feel bad for Palmetto because they got to play them first and then Columbus down the line. But they were well coached and they were talented all the way. You look at their 4 losses: Hoover, who's 11-2, St. Thomas Aquinas, Chaminade, Heritage. So those are their 4 losses. So they're going to be tough as well. So I don't think it bothered them that much not to get the higher seed because they would have had to play these same teams. But of all the teams, Central, because they got knocked out, and that's really painful. Because of the fact, like I said, in a situation like that, those kids, they were innocent. I mean, those kids had nothing to do with it, and now they had to pay the price.
Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned that and going through some of the games to watch, and especially in that 7A bracket, that Western Palmetto game, because Western's the one that took Palmetto out last year in the bracket. I don't, and that's where I say don't write off Western here because that 4-6 record is actually really 6-4 when we look at it in terms of on the field. I think honestly at the end of the day, Western could go through and again. Could they get the Columbus and challenge? I think for me, that 7A Region 4 bracket actually is more wide open than people think, just because Columbus is a defending state champion. Columbus is not the same Columbus we've seen the last few years.
No, not even close. I mean, defensively, they've done real well. Offensively, they haven't. They gave up 46 points to St. Thomas Aquinas. Northwestern took them apart in the GMAC game. They just haven't had a consistent offense. And, Dave Dunn's just still one of the best coaches, and he's going to pretty much find a way to navigate. But it seems like it's destined to be them and Western, down the line a couple of weeks. But you never know. You never know. Anything could happen in this strange world. But like I said, I've watched Western the last couple of weeks. They beat West Broward handily. Good football team. And so 7A is kind of a crapshoot. We all know Venice is by far the best team. I know that, up north, we've had an opportunity to watch Lake Mary saw them in the opening game against Cardinal Gibbons, a good football team. That would probably be the team right now that would come out of the north, but we'll see. Like I said, the state playoffs are a whole different ball game, especially if you haven't been there before.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the matchups that I'm more interested in seeing is the Coconut Creek and Blanche Ely matchup.
Yeah, they played 2 weeks ago, Chris. They played 2 weeks ago. So, that's one of those things that right away you see it. Blanche Ely's signature win is against Chaminade. And obviously that was an extremely tough, setback for Chaminade, who was going through a phase at that time where they had, going through their third quarterback. They had two linemen out and a defensive back. And no excuses because Ely played well. But Ely and Creek are a really long time, rivals. That's where you look at some of the teams over the years that they played. They're really border each other for players. And, Tyrone Moss actually started at Coconut Creek and then went over to Ely. So, yeah, it is an intriguing matchup. It was close before and it'll be close again.
No, absolutely. And you talked, you alluded to something there about Shema Madonna. And I think was the number one to say, like, they've been through 5 quarterbacks this year. Let's talk about that, because it's been it's been a quarterback carousel. But, once they got things figured out, it was okay. Drop the first 2 games. They've been on an 8-game winning streak ever since. It's been no turning back. And I think one of the big, you get some big wins here. You beat Aquinas. You beat the teams that you need to beat. And I honestly, when we looked at when the final rankings came out, I mean, this was even apparent, evident, beforehand, that there's really nobody else. I mean, it's Chaminade and there's everybody else basically in their region, and even maybe in the entire Class 1A.
Yeah, well, you look at last year, Clearwater Central Catholic came in 14-0, and Chaminade ran the clock on them in the third quarter. Granted, they lost 11 kids, 8 to the Power 4, including a quarterback who's playing at NC State, and a running back who's playing at North Carolina, and a receiver who's starring, probably one of the best freshmen in the country at Ohio State. So we'll look at the 1A, and like I said, down here, and there's nobody. I mean, it'll just be a formality. I know maybe down the line, the last 3 years, everyone said, well, Cardinal Newman will give them a run. But, Cardinal Newman's got a really good team, but did they have enough to beat them? Probably not.
I say that. And I say, and you bring up a valid point about that. It could think, because I saw Cardinal Newman against Buchholz, and Buchholz gave him everything, and Buchholz won that game 14-7 here. And and I think that kind of sent us shockwave, like, hey, no, Cardinal Newman may not necessarily going to challenge Chaminade Madonna. You think they might, but Buchholz kind of hit the reset button there on that thought.
Yeah, but you also got to figure Cardinal Newman's a 1A school, and Buchholz was much bigger, so it always comes down to the depth. And I was listening to Bob a little bit and talking about Clearwater Central Catholic schedule and how tough it was, and it was. I mean, they played a really good, but nobody in the state had maybe in the country had a schedule like Chaminade or Plantation American Heritage. Look at Chaminade; they lined up against everybody from Bosco in the opening game. They went and beat a St. Thomas team they hadn't played in 41 years, and they ran for 370 on Chaminade. I mean, on St. Thomas, which I've never seen. I mean, not even close. You don't do that. And then they beat and probably one of the best games of the year, beat American Heritage, and they played. A very challenging schedule. They played Western and beat Western. So that's a team that the train's gonna. I not only penciled them in, I penned them in with magic marker to be in the state championship game.
Magic marker, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
I don't think that's one of those teams. And obviously that's going to be and 2A is going to be real interesting in South Florida. Cardinal Gibbons has kind of relinquished, their whole Booker T. Washington. Do never, ever, ever sleep on Ice Harris coach team. They've come through the gauntlet this year in a major way. They lost to Vero Beach at Vero Beach and Lakeland at Lakeland. And, they're, those are those teams that kind of woke them up a little bit. But Carroll City on the way back, too. And then Coach George Stubbs has done a tremendous job. Put them in a situation, where they're going to play Gibbons in the first round. So that really should be interesting. 3A comes down to one team. I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat Northwestern. Northwestern, lost that game to Central by only 3 in the first go around, and everybody said, well, you know what, that's going to be the region semifinal or the region final rather, and but. It's just going to be tough. You got to give Teddy Bridgewater a lot of credit. First year, never coached before of any type. He's been around and coached kids, but he never coached a whole team like that. They've got an opportunity to really, they have a chance to go, to state. I don't really see anybody in the South End, that would hold them back. Obviously, Rains is in the North, but in the South, and Teddy's got, outstanding offense, really good defense. And, I don't see anybody really beating them, especially you look in their opening opponent against Barron Collier, who led up like 90 points to Lely. So, it doesn't bode very well.
Let's talk about that with Miami Northwestern. Especially with Teddy Bridgewater, as you mentioned, never been a head coach before, never coached a team like this. But the one thing that he does have is the characteristic of a Bulls alum, and bringing back to his playing days, he's reinforced that, brought that back.
Right.
I mean, talk about just what he has been able to do with that just alone on that particular part, because that, the walking to a situation where it's high pressured, like a place like Miami Northwestern, that's not easy. And for him to come in there and just, it comes natural for him. I mean, it really, as made the big turnaround that the Bulls were needing.
Yeah, well, they never really strayed too far. I mean, they've always been around, and playing competitive football, even when they were down the last couple of years. Got to remember, when Max Edwards was there, he won 3 straight state titles. So it's not like they've gone too far away. And the irony of both he and Jackson win in the first round, it'll be Max against the Northwestern Bulls again. So, but yeah, he's loaded with talent, Josh. I mean, he's got one of the best receiving cores, young receiving cores. He's got a quarterback that does a great job. He's got a really, really talented secondary with Cox and also Branch, who's done a really good job. So I don't really see anybody beating them. 4A becomes a 2-team race, and we know that if anybody screwed things up, as they say, screwed the pooch, it'd be Norland, because they had everything going for them. And I heard Bob talking about the Armwood game when they played in the the kickoff show with the kickoff classic. But you never could judge. You look at Ocala Vanguard, and they're 9-1. They played Central in the kickoff classic. They didn't get across midfield one time in a 38-0 loss, not one time. So it shows you how things can be, and yeah, Armwood's a great team. Norland obviously, was reeling from last year, losing the Berkeley Prep in a game that they never thought they'd lose to. And then you got Heritage, as potent as they are. Great quarterback, junior, committed to the University of Texas and Bell, running back Byron Lewis. They've got a really, really good team. And you talk about a schedule. Look at all the gauntlet they ran. Played the number 2 team in the country, Milton from Georgia. Played against Chaminade. Played against St. Thomas. Played against Western. They've taken on some pretty good talent as well. So it's going to come down between those 2 teams in 4A. 5A, this is the first time in, I think, 12 years that St. Thomas hasn't been a 1 seed in the region.
I mean, let's stop there and talk about that, because when was the last time St. Thomas Aquinas had 3 losses in the regular season? We have to go back over a decade to find that, I believe.
Yeah, well, and 2 of them locally. See, that's the thing. They usually, if they're going to lose, it'll be a beginning of the year to like Gorman or Mater Dei or one of those schools, and then they bounce back during the season. But, they got those 2 losses, and there's no shame, because Chaminade easily is one of the best teams in the country still. You erase those 2 losses. Remember, they lost to Bosco by 7, and that was with, as you mentioned, a new quarterback and then a new quarterback after that. And, but I think that, Atlantic is the number 1 seed. Atlantic's good, but the plus that they'd have is playing Chaminade at their place. They usually have to go to Fort Lauderdale to play, but that would be a really good matchup. I just think when it comes time, as well as I do, St. Thomas is going to be there at the end. I mean, they're just well coached and they've got talent, and they learn from their mistakes. And those, like I said, those 3 teams they lost to, and Gorman Chaminade and Heritage aren't any slouch. So obviously, 6, I don't think we really have a team. Southridge has had a really good year, no doubt. I mean, I think that they've done a tremendous job, but I just don't see, and Homestead's fallen off dramatically. Piper had a great year. Quentin Short, easily coach of the year in South Florida. It's not even close. It went 9-1. But I don't think any of those teams would match up with a Tampa Bay Tech or an Edgewater or even a Armwood. Obviously, in the Southwest, Boca had a great year. Let's remember they're 10-0, but they had a loss, and that was to Western. And then 7A, we talked about it. I think Western would have the best chance because they have an offense and they can score some points. So it's going to be interesting. That road's going to be a competitive road, and as you know, it's never going to be easy. I think South Florida has a realistic chance to have 3 or 4 teams at home here at Pitbull Stadium. Chaminade definitely. Northwestern, I think, is going to be there for basically sure. I think St. Thomas got a really good chance to be there. So at least three teams, and nobody would be disappointed with that.
You look at the 2A bracket, you get Cardinal Gibbons and Carroll City playing against each other. And you look down the line, there's Booker T staring right at them. What's your impression of that bracket in general?
Yeah, well, like I said, Chris, Cardinal Gibbons hasn't played very well. In a span of 2 games, they let up 115 points. Chaminade scored 63 on them, and then they got Miramar got 48 on them. I don't know if they have the defense. Like I said, Carroll City has come on this year. They haven't played a tremendous schedule, but this is a program that's been down for a few years. And I'll tell you, Chris, like I said, don't sleep on Booker T. Washington, because Ice Harris is a tremendous coach, and he beat Southridge 2 weeks ago, which kind of woke people up, because Southridge was on an 8-game winning streak or 7-game winning streak, and they beat them. So, 2A's going to be interesting, but I think that Booker T comes out of the area, and we'll see what happens after that.
No, and Blue, let's let's look at the rest of the state, because you don't discover South Florida, but the rest of the state, and because you travel around all year round the different places. I mean, when you're looking at the rest of the teams here, I mean, what are maybe some of the biggest surprises you saw here out of the brackets looking at it, or maybe what's, hey, what stands out as interesting to you in your mind?
Well, obviously there's the old guard is still the old guard. It's, Coco loses a bunch of times, but there's a reason why. To me, you look at programs if you look at a 2A final, I mean, it's going to be awfully tough for Cardinal Mooney. I'll tell you what Coach Clark has done there. He's turned things around. They have I believe next to Lakeland, they have the second longest winning streak in the state, if not the longest one. Coco, we know that Ryan Schneider is going to be there. We had mentioned Clearwater Central Catholic doing a tremendous job, having a great schedule. I guess, until they beat Chaminade, I think that they're still the team. You look at this, Josh, and you look at some of these teams, like Mosley. Mosley did a great job. They lost. They became a 3 seed in 5A. Your alma mater, Middleburg, playing Niceville, having to go all the way. But I don't feel bad. My North Miami's got to play St. Thomas in the first round. So.
Yeah, I saw that. Our alma maters, they got some tough outs in the first round. But I pointed out that Middleburg had never made the playoffs 3 straight years until this time around. So some history making here for some of these teams, and then we got some first-year programs coming into this as well, first-time teams.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of matchups. I mean, you got to give Nice a lot of credit. I mean, they've done such a great job this year. They've run the gauntlet and have met every challenge so far. You mentioned Tampa Jefferson. Seems like the old days now, undefeated at 10-0. O'Galley, which lost to up in Tallahassee. That was their only loss. I think that, Coach Sands has done a tremendous job with them, as far as that's concerned. We know Reigns. I think Reigns was picked at the beginning of the year to be the team in 3A to beat. I mean, you look in 2A, Havana Gadsden County. Come on. I mean, what a great year they've had, 9-1. They have an opportunity, to be a team that's going to cause a lot of problems. Although I think Jacksonville Bulls is a team that's played so consistent, and they know what it is. Gadsden County hasn't been this far. This is one of those things where Bulls it's like a yearly thing. Even when they're 8-4, they get into the second or third round. So, I think they're going to be one of the teams that a lot of people have to look out for. A very underrated team, and they played very well, and I think people take them for granted, is Mariana. They're 10-0, and I've watched them throughout the year. Yeah, they haven't played a killer schedule, but they get a home game. I think this is the first home game they've had in a long time in the first round. Get a chance to play Florida High, which I think is going to be, interesting. In the northern part, as you mentioned, with Orlando, the First Academy, being ineligible. I mean, it seems like it's a no-brainer that Clearwater Central Catholic has an opportunity, but I think Carrollwood Day could give them fits because they're very athletic. I think they have an opportunity to do some really, really good things, come the playoff time. And those teams really play each other tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rivalry. St. Augustine back. No doubt, had a really good year, had a loss or two, and, they get an opportunity. I think a team that people don't know much about, and you and I followed them over the last couple of years, is Choctaw. And the job that Frank Beasley's done over there since coming back. And, last year they pulled the ultimate upset, in the second round of the playoffs. And I think they have the opportunity to kind of come back. I'll tell you another team, don't sleep on them, and that's in 4A is Port Charlotte. They've had a really good year. I mean, they battled probably Venice closer than a lot of people have. So, there's a lot of good teams around the state that a lot of people don't know. As you said, I get a chance to see all these teams throughout the course of a summer. I've done that a long time because I said, it's tough for me to leave South Florida during the season because you have like crazy games every week. And now with everybody playing each other, and Chris, when you were down south, you never seen teams like this play each other every week, and that's the thing. And now you have a really valid, when you say, well, this team's better than this team, and they play. I mean, and got to give St. Thomas credit because they stepped up and they're not just playing a couple of games, they're playing a bunch of games. Columbus the same way. We're trying to make Columbus and St. Thomas a yearly thing because that'd only be fair. Now with Chaminade being in the Broward County Athletic Association, they've got to at least play, Gibbons and St. Thomas every 2-3 years. So, yeah, that's the difference, I think, as far as South Florida is concerned, is they're playing everybody. And I know around the state, too, as you mentioned, St. Francis Academy, who beat IMG pretty good. So that shows you when Central Catholic played them, what a great job they did. You look at Northwestern right off the bat this year, who they take into overtime, Venice, in a game where they stayed right with them every single, all step of the way. But, it should be really interesting.
No, absolutely. And of course, Chris, you got something you want to ask?
Yeah. The astronaut situation, a lot of people raised earlier, comes down to strength of schedule. What's your thoughts of the strength of schedule and the way team schedule trying to get into the playoffs?
Well, it's a good question because I think that people with knowledge now are playing a tougher schedule because at the end of the year, you have a lot of teams that basically are 9-1, but they're playing on the road because they didn't play a tough schedule. And the one loss that they did have was a district game. So I think that you take a look at if you're going to schedule for next year, you got to figure I'd much rather go 5-5 and be a top 4 team. Because of the fact that you play a tougher schedule, and it no longer can you play that cupcake schedule and do anything in the playoffs. You just won't. I mean, you could be a number 2 seed and face a number 6 or 7 off the bat. Like in the case right here of Western. Western's a 7. They're going against Palmetto, who's a 2. We'll see how that works out. But to answer your question, Chris, I think what needs to be done is these teams got to continue to stay, step up and play, competitive schedule. You can't back off. Even if you get beat, at least you get the points for playing those teams as they advance and win.
No, absolutely. And Blue, to kind of wrap things up here, let's talk about the state championships being in Miami-Dade County, not just for this year, but for the next 3 years. The FHSAA announced a little over a week ago that officially that Pitbull Stadium on the campus of FIU will be hosting the 1A through 7A state championships. The only state championships they won't be hosting is the Rural, which is up in the Villages. But let's talk about that. The state championships returning to Miami-Dade County for the first time since 2006.
Well, you know how I feel about that. I wish they signed a 99-year deal in Orlando. That to me is fair to everybody. It's good to have it in South Florida. I travel a lot, so it's good to have it. But you know what? I always think about what's fair for guys like you and other people, having to come, if you're a Tallahassee team, or that year when they played down here, Graceville came, which was right near the border, so it's not easy. But I think that they'll roll out the red carpet. The people at FIU have done a great job. It's a really nice facility. I think that, I don't think they'll ever reach capacity, but, I think it's in the 20s. Yeah. And, the only thing is that time of year, it's really expensive to stay in South Florida. The hotel rooms are expensive. The restaurants are expensive. That's my only drawback, about having it there, because I think of everybody else. Because when you have it in Orlando, you got 1 billion hotel rooms up and down. You got all those restaurants. And that's why I think after the 3 years, and Dan LaForce and I talk about that they've got to step up. Orlando's got to step up and sign a really decent deal where they have it there, because it's a good hub for an airline. If you live in Pensacola, you can fly there, and it's not an arm and a leg. So, yeah, that's it.
But can I potentially offer what potentially might be the solution? It may not necessarily be right in Orlando, but
I know the
villages, because my understanding is in the next 2 to 3 years, there will be at least a couple hotels that are going to be built right next to the campus of the new Villages High School, and they're supposed to expand the stadium out to where it'll be eventually at least 10,000 seats, which would be more than enough to do you think that would be a suitable compromise? If it's not directly sitting in Orlando, it's still close enough that people can get to Orlando and back if the teams need to stay, if they want to stay outside?
I guess, but I think what you just brought up too is hotel rooms, restaurants is just not enough. Like if you have 4 teams coming from South Florida and all that, it's still an extra hour ride north of Orlando. So it's you might as well, like a couple of years. It's better than Tallahassee, where Homestead was coming from 545 miles. In some states other than Texas, you could go into 2 states in 540 miles. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just wish that maybe they all come together and play this thing at that soccer stadium in Orlando. It's a great venue. It has, I understand Camping World is, kind of expensive to get, and it's not, and it really, I'm over the big stadiums, because as well as I do, when this all began, we had them at Florida Field in Gainesville, and you saw Fort Meade and North Florida Christian on a Thursday at 1:00 draw like 800 people. So to me, the only advantage of having it in South Florida is the football fans are crazy, so they're going to go to a 10:00 game, no matter who's playing, just to see the game. So it's but my solution, I said, is Orlando, and I know the people up in the villages who work really hard, and I know that. But unless they get an opportunity to get more hotels, more restaurants, because when I went to the villages, I stayed in Leesburg, which isn't that far away. But that's it. But I appreciate you guys having me on today, Chris. Great seeing you as always, man. Keep up the good work.
I gotta say this, Bruce. I owe my career to you. You're a mentor to me. And we've known each other for 3 decades now.
Yeah, a long time.
And this has been and over here it's been 15 years. And Chris and Blue, I both owe it to you, both of y'all. So both of y'all have been inspirations and great people to work with and be able to talk football. And this is the reason why we dedicated a little bit longer segment for you, Blue, because we could talk, and it definitely when we get going, it's just it's a conversation that can just spur questions on the moment.
Good stuff. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you soon, Chris. Thanks so much. Hopefully you can come down one time to see us. And Hallandale's getting better. They won a couple of games this year. Yep. Coach Bush is doing a good job. And we'll see. It's really tough. Public schools is not as easy as when you were down here because there's too many charter schools, too many private schools. And but that's why you look at a Western or a school like Cypress Bay a couple of years ago for doing what they've done. But again, I appreciate you both. Josh, we'll see you in a couple of weeks down here. And Chris, thanks so much.
No, appreciate it, Blue. Thank you, and take care, Blue. All right, that was the great Larry Bluestein joining us here from Prep Red Zone, Florida, and LarryBluestein.com. And Chris, boy, 3 hours goes by quick like that. Out the door.
Oh yeah.
So
lock them back, and it's going to be a very interesting postseason.
Yeah, very interesting postseason. Most games slated for next Friday, November 15th. Some might be on Thursday, some may be on Saturday, depending on the schedule, depending on how many, if there's enough officials, because the officials situation still a little short in some areas. So we may have some games played Thursday, some games played on Saturday, depending on the amount of officials crews available across the Sunshine State. But you can check floodhsfootball.com for times and stuff as we get them over here over the weekend here, and check out off the playoff pairings. And then, of course, you can always rewatch this show and kind of check out everything that we talked about here over the last 3 hours here on YouTube, especially YouTube. And if you're watching this video again after we've been live here, you can hit that super thanks you to support us as we are a YouTube partner in the YouTube partner program here. But Chris, appreciate you doing everything you did here, especially with the graphics, and it's been fun here. And I think I actually got to a couple. I think, and I know this is probably from Emory. Josh, great listening to y'all break down the brackets and analyzing the teams. Yes, appreciate it so much. And Chris, thank you again so much as well. But all right, for Christopher Lyke, I'm Joshua Wilson. Thank you for watching the Drive the State bracket analysis show. We'll be back with our Blitz shows come Monday and Tuesday night, and more Drive the State shows as we go through the playoffs here. Appreciate everybody. Until then, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.